Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the live stream. So tonight I've actually got something a little different. Let me turn on our little bleepers here. So tonight I got something a little different. The reason you don't see the chat on the side is because I don't want to block Rick out. This is my buddy Rick. I'm sure you guys are familiar with from the channel. He keeps me employed, probably 40 to 50% of my time, and gets me in the seat. So tonight the topic is owning your own company, and then also, as you guys have seen, Rick does forestry work, and so we're gonna talk about forestry work. If you guys have questions about getting into forestry, mulching, all that sort of stuff. So I see we've already got Dig Nation in here. What's going on? Good to see you, man. LR, I don't know who you are. I think this is your first time in here that I've seen. Oh, Little Sketchers, what's going on? Little Sketchers is actually from somewhere in the Detroit area. Where are you at, Little Sketchers? I don't remember. But he's a Michigan local boy. So anyway, I'm going to start the live stream by letting Rick tell you just a little bit of how he got into the industry and then how he started his business. So it's all you.
Hey guys, glad you're here. Thank you, Brian. I actually got into the industry at a very young age. I started running heavy equipment around 7 years old. I grew up in a logging family. We worked mostly 7 days a week when I wasn't in school to weekends. I come fascinated with the heavy equipment. So I walked down to the excavating company right down the road and applied for a job. Started out as a laborer, very interested in the heavy equipment side, and I kind of got my feet wet there, getting traction for a while, and slowly progressed from being a laborer to an operator / labor to operator. Traveled around kind of getting a job to job, from being an operator to another company, from the residential side into the commercial side, building roads to full site developments. Cleared some land for a couple companies at the same time while logging. Moved out to Colorado, did work for a big civil company, become a superintendent out there of like 150 employees generally. We had like 40, 50 on site. Moved back to Michigan, worked for the road commission for a little bit. Started my business on the side. I started probably 5, 6 different times, and it took off, got a lot of traction, so I had to make the jump. I made the jump, and here we are today.
So yeah, I actually met Rick. For those of you who don't know our backstory, I sold equipment. So I ran equipment for about 8-ish years, and then got into selling equipment and went to work for the Case dealership. And Rick came in the door one day and was looking for a skid steer, and that kind of is how our relationship started. I somehow finagled him into buying a Case, which I know is Nick's favorite machine. I saw Nick. What's going on, man? Good to have you back. Little Sketchers is from Shelby Township.
Oh, nice.
So anyway, I finagled him into a Case machine, got him a Fecon head. Man, you got like what, 3 or 4 attachments?
4 attachments for me.
So
yep.
Stump grinder, log grapple, and then a standard bucket. And that was kind of the start of our relationship, which was kind of a professional like sales guy to customer relationship originally. But then we kind of worked into a friendship over time. And then when I got shit canned from Southeastern, that's when Rick was like, hey, why don't you come hang out and run some equipment? I said, okay. And so he's behind the scenes. Actually, Rick's been a huge supporter of the channel, by the way, guys. Half the time I've been on those jobs, it's because he calls me and says, hey, I got a job you might want to record. So Rick has been a pretty key part in getting the channel going, so I do appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
So so let's address some things in the comments here, because I've already seen, what are we drinking? And unfortunately tonight I don't have a drink. I have water tonight. We have Pellegrino over here for Rick, and so we're keeping it a little light this week. I think I'm still excuse me, to answer your question, Nick, I'm still coming down from my sugar high from your Pink Whitney from last week. So that's what's going on there. So AP, what's going on? AP is actually over in Great Britain. He shows up. He's been here for at least the last like 3 or 4.
Is that like 14 hours difference?
I think what did you say it was? I think it was right at 12-hour difference, AP. He'll get back to. So by the way, there is a 20-second lag from the time something exits my mouth to the time they see it. and then it has to come back.
So AP's eating lunch right now.
Yeah, I want to see. Yeah,
finished dinner.
Yeah, just pretty close. So
wow.
So pretty awesome. So let's see here. Little Sketchers asked, can he talk about what he was doing on the side and how he started? So how did you kind of start your side hustle and then turn it into a real deal?
Oh, so I started basically just odd and ends from, believe it or not, cleaning people's yards, picking tree branches up, to knowing quite a few people wanting to build a garage or just popping stumps, throwing stone into a driveway, just kind of get my hands on any aspects of work that you were capable of, you knew how to do. So yeah, I'd say I'm qualified for the job, and I'd tell the homeowner what we're doing. We'd rent the machine, they'd buy the material, I'd charge them a couple $100 and dive in. A lot of trial and error. I mean, obviously, once you get to the point where your capabilities are further down the road as an operator, I mean, you come pretty confident, but then the whole business side of bidding any kind of work is really a little bit different. So a lot of trial and error, a lot of success, a lot of failure.
Where'd you learn how to bid work?
Pencil and paper.
Gotcha. Trial and error?
Trial and error.
Not making money?
Not making money. Basically trying to figure things out, budgeting like how much the equipment would be to how much a load of gravel be, calling the trucking companies. A lot of unforeseen mistakes that you make that obviously the more experience you got, the more you have like, oh, hey, I might need some fabric and we're going to top that 1x3 with some 21 AA, to basically having a homeowner run you off the job not happy with what you guys were doing. So not that you weren't capable of doing it, but whoa, we didn't bid this in the job. I mean, you learn pretty quick. Trial and error, pencil and paper, and learn from your mistakes.
So AP just replied he's only 5 hours ahead of us, so it is 12:35 in the morning there.
Wow.
So yeah, but that being said, AP shows up for every one of these, even though it's like when we wrap up, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning this time. Nice. So,
wow.
So Dig Nation asked, how would you go about quoting a land clearing job? Like, what's your process?
Basically knowing what you're getting into first. When you start looking at like a land clearing job, you better be able to run a chainsaw. You got to look at a tree to see the way they're going to fall, any kind of hazards, houses, property lines, not doing damage to other people's. If I could just cut a couple trees and hit the ground, to maybe I need to cable and rope and maybe top or crane out a couple jobs, to keeping everything in a property line, right? Those are your boundaries. When you're doing like a residential job or a commercial job, you can't go trash somebody's yard or their fence, or even if it's like an old farm field fence where they used to keep the cattle up in the field. All that stuff's very sentimental. So that kind of everything, you're looking at your playground and your boundaries, and you're seeing what you're having to work with. So when you go from there, I mean, you're looking at how much time you're going to have into a job. You can't just, go clear an acre's worth of work and not really realize what you're getting into. There's a lot of unforeseen costs. I mean, you're looking at the stumps. When you look at a stump at the ground, you might see a 2-foot stump, and that sucker be 8 feet around in the ground, 2-3 feet deep, depending on what kind of root ball, the material you got to haul off, the chipping of the debris, to looking for outsources of where I got to get rid of material. So there's a little bit that goes involved. Watching your local tree companies, calling around to some of the contractors out in the world that maybe you have a lead on a job, that they could come out and kind of give you a price or a quote, to know what the going rate is.
So, by the way, another lesson, and I say this on Rick's behalf because he's mentioned it so many times. Another lesson that Rick had to learn the hard way is the importance of, there's nothing wrong with putting everything into a contract. In fact, do put everything into a contract. The homeowner, it's as a new business owner, it can be really easy to get yourself in the mindset of you don't want to lock them into a rigid contract because then they might back off and get scared and think that you're being too aggressive. And you tell me if your experience differs, but I would actually argue the opposite. Most of the homeowners that see you're putting things line item by line item into a contract are actually going to feel more secure, because it's not only protecting your interest as the business owner, it's protecting their interests as well, that, hey, now I have this piece of paper that I can hold you to, that you did your job at the end of the entire land clearing job. So would you agree with that?
I do. And it's not, I don't want to use the term playing the part, but you have to be the part. I mean, when you open the door, the first impression's everything. So when you walk up to the homeowner, you want the confidence that you're going to be the contractor that they want. You don't come rolling in some $1,500 hoopty and look like you're going to be the taillights that they never see again with a check in hand. So, I mean, a lot of it goes into part to the way that you talk to them, to showing out some of the other pointers on the other aspects of the job, some of the additional costs. I mean, there's so much that goes into clearing land that you almost want to cut your teeth on moving some dirt or working for a company, doing some tree work, to getting into like a big civil company, ripping out trees and berms and stumps, and kind of really learning what capabilities you have. Because a lot of the times I'll get in some of these jobs where I have the equipment, but they're a little on the smaller side. But you learn how to cut your teeth with the bigger stuff and the smaller stuff. So using what you got, not going out buying everything. I mean, I make a lot of jokes of it, just the two men in the truck with a chainsaw, They're out there, they'll go out and do the job for $200-$300. It costs you more than that to show up to the job.
Yeah, just to mobilize.
But maybe they're out there learning.
Yeah.
A couple $100 is a lot of money. And you got to get out there, and you can't be scared,
So to kind of go back, and we'll do this at a real high level, obviously, but to go back to his question, on how to quote a land clearing job, that was kind of you do need to be aware of all of the variables. And it's like anytime anyone asks, and it's the same with, I had a guy ask me the other day, how long would I estimate it would take to strip a foot of soil off of a 1 acre farmer's field? Any sort of questions like those that surface level seem like they'd be really easy to answer. It's kind of like I answered on the dozer question, like, who knows? I mean, what kind of material is it? Is it clay? Is it topsoil? Is it sand? Is it a wet site? Is it dry? Are you pushing downhill? Are you pushing uphill? Can you stockpile in one spot? Does the stockpile have to be in one spot, or can it span the whole, acre lot? So there's so many variables. So all that to say, it's really hard to kind of quote a fake land clearing job because there's so many variables. But to kind of dumb it way down, let's say we had roughly a 1 acre lot that was pretty heavily wooded. Kind of what would and all we were doing, we're not removing any lumber. We're just going to go in and we're going to use your Fecon head to mulch it. Kind of what's your process? Are you charging an hourly rate for the machine, or is it more of you walk the property and judge it from, this is going to take me 6 hours to do and I charge this rate per 6? What's your thought process?
So yeah, there's a couple ways to look at it. I mean, you got the hourly rate. You have to have like a minimum. You can't show up to a job for an hour. I look at a lot of them. We'll go bid them. I do a lot of jobs I bid versus do the hourly. Just from the experience, what you're getting into, and why do I want to sit here and make this job take freaking 5 hours when I could turn and burn in 2.5, 3 hours, So, and the other thing is, like, I look at the jobs. I like to know what I'm getting, like, as a homeowner, and as a contractor. I like a set price is what I kind of look for. So, I mean, you could go the hourly rate. At the end of the day, you're kind of shooting yourself into the foot. I mean, you could work the hours all you want. You could drag it out, but then you'll get into a pickle. As I've had experience, you're doing it by the hour, and this homeowner's like, gosh, this is starting to take a little bit longer, not realizing maybe you got a little bit smaller machine than what you should have on a job, and you're charging this hourly rate. So,
Or you ran into one of the other 1,400 variables that could go into it.
Correct. So, I mean, when it really depends on what kind of equipment you have. For me to do like an acre job with the equipment that I have, I look at what other resources I'm going to have to pull, whether it's like Brian's going to show up, myself. I got a couple other guys, Bobby and Sean and them. You'll see them in our videos and on my site and stuff. If you see a couple certain people on the job and Brian and I'm there, it's probably a pretty technical and more on the higher side kind of job because of the skill set that's there. And then you look at all the equipment that you got, what you're going to have to resource. Bigger guy's going to come in with like a hydro axe or a big old stump grinder, like a hydro stumper. And they're going to come in and they're going to be a lot cheaper than you are because they are going to move something in mass production. They got big payment and they move quick. So I can't just say we're going to go blow this acre out. You know, I was doing it the other day looking at a job and a guy was $2,500 cheaper. Yeah, I can make money on it, so I brought my price down because I'm slow that week. So I'm like, okay, I got to chew on it and see where I'm at because now you get into the pickle times money. And this guy, he's going to be out in 6 hours, and it's going to take me 2.5 days. So you got to kind of really know what you're looking at, the equipment size that you got, and your skill set. So once you know your overhead and your cost, I mean, the cost for the whole year, your operating cost, you know, you realize how much you got to make per month besides your personal bills. So, you know, I at least have to make $1,000 plus a day. So if I look at something and I'm like, this is going to take me 3 days. I mean, if you're trying to get like a daily rate, you got to kind of figure out where you're at. So automatically there's $3,000. Well, now I got wood removal. I got stumps, you know, that got to come out. Even though they're staying on site, you still have operating runtime, and every hour that you're running, you have to get paid for. So that's why I like the bid jobs, because I know what I'm getting to. I don't want to necessarily just say hourly is the way to go, but when you're first kind of cutting your feet and getting into it, you just, like I said, you got to know what you're looking at in the markets. If an acre is a $7,500 price tag on it, that might be the occasion here, but then you got to realize when you're looking at a job in a subdivision that, you know, we get in some 2-3 acre jobs, but you're only clearing an acre and it's all got to go. I mean, you could be up to the $20,000-$25,000 if there's a couple $1 million house here, power line. So, I mean, basically, you got to get your feet wet and know the going rate. I mean, a lot of little wood ants come out when you start dropping wood on the ground. You could load them and they'll come up with their dump trailers and take them. So you got to kind of look at your resources you got.
Yeah. So this is kind of a weird thing because we've got someone else here. So I'm not just going to straight work down the comments. I'm going to try to an extent, but a quick sidebar. I did want to say hi to a couple guys. Garrett, I see you in the comments, buddy. We are going to answer your question. I promise. We're going to stick with the train of thought for the moment, just to not derail the conversation. But I am going to come back to your question, and we are going to talk about it. That was a great question. But hello in the meantime. Jay Excavating, thanks for coming in, man. Good to see you. James up there in Canada, Gibson Landscapes Construction. Okay. He's up in... forgive me, James, where are you? You're not that far away. You're like 3 or 4 hours away up in Canada. So anyway, wanted to say hi to a couple people. William, good to see you again. So let's go back to some of the questions that have popped up here. I will agree. Nick said land clearing looks easy, but damn, it's a lot of things to take note before cutting trees. That's where, so I went this summer. If you dig back on my channel a little bit, you'll see where I went to one of Rick's tree clearing jobs, and it was like a legit land clearing, like fallen trees. It wasn't just going out and mulching. And that was a real eye-opener to me because I've always heard, you know, tree work is really dangerous, and I always thought, why is it so dangerous? I mean, if you're doing this as a profession, you've got a pretty good read on how those trees are going to fall. And the real eye-opener to me was, for the most part, that's true, but at the same time, those branches are so tangled up and there's so much stuff going on in those trees that you can be confident this tree branch is coming down here, and next thing you know, it grabs a branch in a weird way and it swings it, you know, 90 degrees over from where you thought it was going to land. So yes, 100%. And Rick is the one to really shore this one up. But yeah, there's way more that goes into it than meets the eye initially.
Well, tree equipment is probably one of the most expensive out there. When you get looking at any kind of forestry work, stump grinders, chainsaws, everything that it takes to operate. It's not like you just show up with a $2,500 laser and a bucket and a shovel and you go grade the yard. You're showing up with numerous parts, and it's one of the highest risk in insurance. It's one of the highest death ratios. So it's like 1 out of every 10 person. That counts for the homeowner, the farmer, the logger, the tree guy, to the guy cutting brush in the backyard. 1 out of 10 person die when you figure out that
doing
ratio.
tree work.
Anything when it comes to trees, chainsaws, forestry work. I mean, you think you got it all figured out, and the next thing you know, like you said, you're dropping this big tree and it catches a vine that you didn't see. And this thing's coming at you right now at 200 miles an hour, and you're busy stumbling around through the brush or on the ground trying to figure out where you're going. These things are flopping around, so experience is a plus. I mean, that's why you'll hear guys, this is the price, and they kind of are overwhelmed with the price, but it took me all these years to do this job in a day. And they're like, God, this price is so ginormous. Well, you wouldn't believe how many life-threatening and close calls I've had in my life to get that kind of experience. And then I jumped in and had to buy this equipment. So there's a lot that goes into cutting trees, and it's expensive when you start running the forestry. It's just so hard on the equipment and the trucks and trying to move these things that are 2,000-3,000 pounds. I mean, I got that maple log that was 4,000 pounds, and I couldn't even pick it up to put it over the trailer, and I got the skid steer just kind of like rolling it
up on its tiptoes.
Tiptoes. And here's the machine. I'm looking at the cab on the ground. I got my feet up, and I'm looking through the little sunroom that comes in that case. I'm just pushing this thing across the site to get it out the way, and spend 4 hours cutting this thing up so I don't damage my dump trailers and stuff that we just bought. Even though I could just roll it in there, but now I'm going to destroy this $21,000 trailer.
Right.
So
right.
The time. I mean, you got to really value your time, and then, I mean, you got to kind of look at everything too, and your time's worth something. When you kind of get looking at everything, it's worth something. If it's not worth nothing to you, then it's not going to be worth nothing to your customer.
Yeah. So go back through just real quick. Ryan, welcome back to the channel, buddy. Dozer Dennis, good to see you, man. So I'm gonna go back up just because we have talked for a while.
I like this interaction. This is good.
Yeah, this is awesome.
This is good.
So Nick asked earlier, forgive me, Nick, it's been a while, but when you clear a lot, do you usually grind the wood and sell it as wood chips, or do you sell it as lumber, or do you leave it on? I'm gonna add to it, Nick, or do you mostly leave it on site?
Most of the time, it's hauled off. You're building a house. These people don't want it. It's got to get hauled off, so there's an expense. As far as chipping it, if I could run it through a wood chipper and leave it on site, I mean, all this stuff has to be initially agreed upon at the contract at the time with the homeowner. If I could leave everything on site and you got an outdoor wood stove, it's going to save the price a lot. I'm going to pile this stuff out of the way to the agreed area. Obviously not like at the back of the 40, but we're going to come up with an agreement where it's going to go. If I could run it through the wood chipper, absolutely. And if I could actually just stack it in logs, it's a lot cheaper than running another piece of equipment and time. So yeah, absolutely. I try to keep the wood on site. Most of the time it's a 95% ratio. It's got to get hauled off. Wood chips, wood. Typically the stumps, I mean, that's kind of a toss up depending on what you're doing. A lot of times the homeowner call you back after they go rent a Home Depot stump grinder and have at it for a couple days, and that price wasn't too bad. So it really, like I said, it's just a variable, and getting to know the people and seeing what they're looking at, price point, and what their end result is. So that's really what you got to kind of go when you're looking at it all.
All right, so I got a good one. So Little Sketchers asked, when buying equipment, do you think you should loan or save? So I'm assuming what he's saying is take out a loan and buy new, or should you save and get a used machine?
Oh, that's a toss-up. Man, if I were going to jump into the industry, I definitely would save my money and buy a used piece of equipment. When you have a new piece of equipment, you got to think. I mean, what was that payment on that skid steer? $2,000 a month. I was sitting at. So $2,000 a month without insurance. I mean, that's
20. And that's not attachments either,
no,
right?
that's $24,000 a year overhead. Now you got to add all your insurance and everything else. And I mean, you could find used equipment, good equipment, right around $30,000. You know, it might be beat up. The first time you buy this thing and do any kind of aspects, what I do, the last thing I care about is the paint and the stickers. You know, I'm here to do a job, so. Yeah, they're pretty when you buy them new and everything works and the bells and whistles. But I mean,
you're just scratched to pieces.
Yeah, man, it's toast. Like the first time I brought it back with like 500 hours to service, it looked like this thing's been through a war zone. But I mean, I'm not out there destroying it, but yet I'm not going to let a 2-3 inch little branch stop me from my operation. So used way is not bad to go. I mean, you just got to know the equipment, to familiarize yourself with the problems on a certain model, brand, kind of what they have and what you're looking for. I definitely would save up and buy something used. And renting to do a job every once in a while is not a bad way to go either if you're going to do a job every once in a while. My aspect where I'm at the point I'm at, is reliability times money. So it's got to run. I mean, when I hit the start button, it's got to go. When it's broke down, I got to be able to get on the telephone, call the service and be like, hey, look, this is down. Well, when do you need it? Tomorrow. So we're going to order this today or get me another machine. So there's you got to figure out how much work you got, but definitely used way is a good way to go.
So I will say, now he answered from the business owner side. I'll answer from the former equipment sales side. I will say, there's no reason to go out and buy a brand new machine, especially if you're starting a company where your overhead is already going to be pretty outrageous, because you have to think you're not just buying a skid steer, you're not just buying a mini excavator, you have to buy the supporting equipment. So you're talking multiple attachments depending on what you're doing. You're going to have to buy a trailer, possibly a dump trailer. You're going to have to buy, if you start getting into some bigger equipment, you might have to buy actually a tag trailer and a dump truck to haul it around. So you're going to have a tremendous amount of startup costs. That's one of the downsides to this industry. So if you can save by going into a used piece of equipment, there is nothing wrong with going that route, and I would actually say it's pretty wise, unless you know firmly what your expenses are going to be and that you can firmly support those expenses. Now, that being said, let's kind of flip over to the other side of the coin there. Excuse me. When you go buy a used piece of equipment, do your homework. I saw it, someone just mentioned it further down in the comments. You very well could be buying someone else's headache. So make sure you do your due diligence. Don't just go out there and run around a parking lot for 5 minutes and say, yeah, I'll take it. Legitimately get a certified technician to look at that machine and go through it really well. See if the owner has any maintenance records on it. That's really important. I will say one of the biggest indicators, and this is the first thing when I would go out on a used equipment appraisal, one of the first things I would look at is how well was the machine greased. And that right there is a fantastic indicator of how well the machine was taken care of. Grease is something that's super, super easy to do.
Cheap.
And really cheap. But so many people ignore that little thing on the maintenance side. If they're ignoring the one little cheap simple thing, they're probably ignoring the more expensive things. And that was almost always true. If it was a wonked out machine that everything was squealing and nothing had grease, there were major underlying issues. And it was because they didn't take care of any of the other maintenance. So yes, absolutely go for a used machine. Be careful what you get yourself into. Do your homework on that.
It's kind of like driving a car, though. When you go out and you look at the car, even a used car, you want to test drive it.
Yep. When
I was looking at a lot of the used equipment, before I bought a new piece of equipment versus the old equipment, I had asked the guy, can I run this on your job? Like, man, I'm going to pay for this in cash. It means a lot to me. I'm here to work it. So get out there and see it, strain it, put it against a tree, dig some hole. Look, man, I'm here to beat the snot out of this thing right now before I drop this money, because typically in like 15, 20 minutes of working this thing, you'll find if there's an issue or not.
Yeah.
And then like all the safety features that are on, if they're busted off, you know, from the latches that come down to the seatbelt to, you know, you pop the hood and you see like the broken oil caps and this and that thing could have sucked up sand or dirt. I mean, it really just takes a lot. Just knowing equipment, being in the field as just an operator, being a good operator and taking care of equipment. I mean, you'll look at the sprockets and you'll see maybe one drive was grabbing more than the other, so maybe that, you know, drive motor's worn out. Just really getting familiar with what you're buying and run it.
And I will say this too, on skid steers particularly, if you're not, even if you are buying direct from the dealership, it's 2 bolts to raise the cab on that machine. Pop the 2 bolts off and raise the cab on that machine and take a look in the belly pans.
Absolutely.
Because skids are notorious for guys never cleaning belly pans. And what happens is everything cakes and builds up in there, and then it actually makes the engine run significantly hotter. And it doesn't necessarily show on your temperature gauge because it's the bottom end of the engine. And so it makes it run significantly hotter. And then it also causes premature wear on fuel lines, on hydraulic lines, on your wiring harness, all of that stuff. So always drop the belly pans. So let's go back up here. Again, we're getting way behind in the comments, but at the same time, these are good questions, so I want to answer them. Dig Nation asked, he does work in subdivisions, digging and laying all the underground utilities.
Awesome.
How would you quote something like that other than just your kind of cost of pipe? What would your kind of approach to that be?
So typically, when you get into doing utilities, there's a square foot price, right? You got you got to know how much your material is going to be, how much your labor is going to be, your production rate. I mean, if you're putting in 4 foot deep, 1,000 feet a day, you know, you got to figure out your square foot, your rise over your run, how much material, backfill. I mean, there's a set cost. I got to know how much it's going to cost me for the operator, how much it's going to cost me for the labor. The truck to get to and from the job, typically you got a work truck on the job. The run time on the machine, which on an 8-hour day, your guys are probably, if it's not you, going to let that thing run for 10. You know, so you got a little bit of fuel cost. You got the maintenance that a lot of people don't see on the back side, and those all kind of start coming into like an hourly breakdown. So, yeah, I mean, that's a very good question. I mean, if it's just like an open cut trench and they're going to flop their pipe and everything, you know, like I said, basically just take $1,000, break it down for, I'm going to do this in 8 hours, right? So, you know, I'm going to be on this job for 8 hours. We're going to dig this trench. You know, is there another set cost? God, I could run with this thing so many different ways. But the material, man, if you're just cutting a trench, you know, it could be $1, $2 a foot straight through. The deeper you go, the more money it is. The wider trenches, the more dollar signs. The bigger equipment, to if you're gonna have to put the backfill back in, or if it's got to be hauled off site or spread on site.
Which that kind of plays into another question, which we're kind of hitting your question, LR, but how do you go about finding dump sites for material?
I guess I need a little more information on that question if you want to go further. But dump sites, that's a good one. They're secretive. You don't tell no one your dump sites.
You don't want competition?
No. Farmers always have holes in their fields. They want to bury.
Dirt.
A builder, typically you could get a builder. They'll build these things, these skyscrapers around us because it's so wet, like 8 feet out of the ground. They want to backfill it so this house is like on a hump, right? Sometimes homeowners, typically it's got to be clean fill. If you're hauling out debris and stuff, though, a lot of times you'll find like a swamp hole up by us that someone's filling in, been pushing in for years.
That is where we're kind of unique in Michigan. We have a lot of low swampy areas, and so it's actually pretty much every day you can drive by some location where some guy's got a sign in his yard looking for clean fill.
Yep.
So that's kind of unique to us, is we don't have to look that hard.
But a lot of it, though, too, like, once you get into the excavating side and you realize how much stormwater runs and how much watershed someone gets off a house and a driveway and a retention pond. I mean, I've pulled in a guy's driveway before, been like, hey, can we fill in part of your yard? I have all this dirt. And he's like, oh, I don't have that kind of money. But it's already in the job to get rid of this material. And you might have a dump site 12 miles away. I could dump here all day long, bring the skid steer down in 2 days, smooth it down, and put a driveway in once in a while. Or maybe get a couple bucks away from the homeowner just by stopping and talking.
Yeah.
You got to kind of get creative when you're in this field.
Don't write off Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist as well. A lot of guys will post on there wanting clean fill material, so that's another great place to look.
I mean, the general area where you're at, think about it just being a consumer, not just being in the earthwork or tree work. Where do you guys go to your local to get the info, whether it's all social media or online to, some, like it used to be the farm stores around here. We used to have all these posted wanted and looking to buy kind of sign, like a Tractor Supply.
Yeah.
Putting up flyers, networking, talking to people. Squeaky wheel gets the grease, so you'll find something. Just don't stop.
Let's see here. Another good question. What's your fleet or go-to equipment for a house lot clearing?
I run the TV 450 Brian pawned off on me.
Yeah, Nick, case sellout. That's
Case.
right. Yeah.
Believe it or not, guys, I've run a lot of equipment. I really love the case equipment. So I run my TV 450. Case skid steer is my main piece. I work the snot out of it. I'll bring in some excavators here and there, dozers once in a while, but my main piece is me, the army of men that I got, and that machine. It is very versatile. It's like a Swiss Army knife, and you could get 10, 12 different attachments show up on a job with that machine, and you could be a one-man wrecking crew for 3-4 days before I got a call and say, hey, can you guys give me a hand? I got to knock some trees down, or pull a guy off a job and bring him over to give me a hand. So definitely a skid steer, and I do like my case. I really do like them.
It's a good machine. The Alpha Series had some issues, by all means. I've fessed up to that before. The B Series has gotten a lot better, but Rick actually, believe it or not, has gotten one of the ones that his is one of the last Alpha Series to be sold, and we have had not really any problems with it. I mean,
no.
Small, minor
stuff. I mean,
but
you gotta look though. The first week I had that thing, I blew a tilt cylinder right off of it.
That's true.
So doing the forestry mulching work.
Yep.
And it really comes down to how you treat it though. I mean, I don't just take this thing out on asphalt and start doing donuts with tracks,
right.
So I really love the case. I really enjoy the skid steer. And you got to also look at the kind of work that you're chasing. I put in a lot of septic fields. I do a lot of excavation. You'll see I bring in equipment. And sometimes it's more beneficial for me to rent a bigger piece excavator and do a job than go out and buy one. Yeah, you might have a big rental bill in it, but how much are you truly working this thing? I mean, you got to look at the hours and what you're doing. And typically, I mean, you could get, even starting out with a skid steer and a grapple bucket, you could find somebody looking for their lot cleaned up, the wood, scraping the driveways, to putting a bucket on. You got to really look at what you're chasing, though, for work.
Yeah. Which that's another good aspect that we haven't really talked about, and I'll touch on it really briefly before we go back to the questions here, but that's another thing that you, especially new business owners, you struggle to get this concept that you do need to be choosy about the work you take. It's very easy to get into the mentality when you're first starting out that you're going to pick up anybody and everybody else's table scraps because they're just turning down all this good work. And what ends up happening is you always end up learning the same lesson that everybody else in the industry has already learned, that there's a reason everyone's turning down those jobs. They're not money makers. You're going to work your ass off. You're going to work an 80-hour work week, and you're not going to have anything to show for it because the margins were so thin and you ran into so many problems on that job that it ate up all of your profits. So that is, and it's just going to come with time. I will say, I tried my hand at owning my own business back in the day, and I will say, you're going to get one of the best educations out there when you own your own company. And a lot of it comes from the school of hard knocks. It's just, you've got to go learn those lessons yourself. So, but do be choosy on your jobs. So getting back to the questions, we'll go off track for just a second. Little Sketchers asked, what do you think about a 308C for grading? The cat hoe. I will say, I don't remember what year they threw emissions on those 308s. If it has a DPF filter, just be wary and make sure it's working correctly. 308s on their own, they're fantastic machines. They do a great job grading. They've got power. I was always happy with them. But the year that they switched over to Tier 4 emissions, they had DPF filters that were having major issues. So, and I think the C was before that switch happened, but I'm not sure. So that's the only thing I'll say there. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I liked them. They were great, good pushing machines. Good bang for your buck. I enjoyed them. I run them for I probably got about 80 hours in one of them cats there. But no, I don't have a whole lot to say on them. My knowledge is a little short, but they were pretty comfortable to run at the time.
So we've got Brandon from Kentucky.
Hey, Brandon.
He said, which he was so Brandon is actually part of the reason we had Rick on this week, is because last week he was in here asking about starting a land clearing and seeding business. He said, if there isn't anyone doing that in my area, do you think that means there's no work?
That's a good indicator. You got to kind of look around and see what others are doing. You got to get creative. If there's nobody doing it, I mean, it is a kind of indicator that maybe there's a reason why that there isn't that much work, and they could get it handled with what they already have, and there's not a lot that's able to chase. Or you could find like the diamond in the rough that maybe the bigger guy that's always been handling it would be willing to let it go. I mean, you got to really do some digging. Kentucky's a little sketchy down the mountains because you got a lot of log clearing, or logging outfits down there. Typically, I got family down there. They chase a lot of the lumber down there. So, and you got hillsides. I mean, unless you're pushing over like a mountain or something, typically they're stripping coal. They'll push the doggone thing right over, and they're not even worried about it. So you just got to check. I don't imagine why they wouldn't burn wood. I mean, everyone heats their house with wood. I'd do some checking, definitely.
I mean, a great way to start, in all honesty, a great way to start is figure out what your cost would be to go rent a machine and a Fecon head, and go do an experiment. Go advertise your services, knowing that you're going to be a little higher because you are having to rent your equipment, but at this point you're not committed to anything. And if it goes terribly wrong and you end up losing $1,500 in the process, at least you don't have a machine with a machine payment that you got to make up for on the back end of it. And if you start getting a couple jobs, okay, now it's worth maybe investigating buying a machine or how you want to take the next step. But there are ways you can kind of ease into that market and kind of test the market without fully committing. So I would say don't totally write it off just because there's no one out there doing it.
Correct. So,
Nick, I saw it. He called us a case sellout. That's why I was laughing earlier. He always accuses me of being a case sellout. So,
dealer support.
Dealer support.
Where it's at for me. I've run a lot of different equipment. I actually used to like the Takeuchi before the emission came. They were probably by far one of the best skid steers I really enjoyed before the emissions came out. So I looked at them, and with the emissions and the issues that they had, and it come down to production, I watched bigger companies just shy away from them, go chase some cats and cases and John Deere's. So dealer support, man, is huge.
Yeah, and we've talked about that on this channel before. Dealer support it doesn't, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what color the paint is, as long as the dealership's going to show up. Unless AP, so AP's from Britain, and he's always in here pushing JCB, and I keep telling him what a hunk of crap they are over here in the States.
Ooh, yeah. I really like those telebooms.
Yeah,
squirt booms.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. That's the farmers
the farmers love it. They love it. They could stack the hay bales up here, dump it over without getting their paint dirty going through the cow manure, and dump the hay bale over the field.
And they can get in from the side, and it's just like getting in a car. They don't have to climb. They love them.
The only reason I'd like it is if I had to clean horse stalls. You angle it and scoop it in, come back out. No, JCB is... I'm not a fan of JCB.
Yeah, it's like I said, AP, in the States, it ain't built for here.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you guys got way better luck and advancement over there. We don't.
Yeah, it's not good.
Like, if you had a JCB and it was a rental for the day, brand new, on a job, like your machine went down for like a civil, you just put your head between your legs and you're like, God dang, dude, like, I'm just going to take the day off. So, yeah, it's a JCB.
So let's see here. James, we'll touch on this super quick because I don't want to get bogged down in the way taxes and depreciation and everything work. But he said,
"How do we have that another day?"
Yeah. So in Canada, it works. You can only write off the first 15% the first year, and then depreciate value every year after.
Move to Michigan.
Yeah, Michigan, I think you can take the full... Is it the full write-off the first year?
You could take a good whack of it.
Yeah, so you could take it... I don't know what the details are. I can't remember the exacts, but you can take a substantial chunk. And so when I was selling equipment at the end of the year, we always had an end of the year, and I'm talking like the last 15 days of the year, we had a mad dash to buy equipment up here because everyone would figure out what their bill was going to be to the government, and then they'd come in and buy a bunch of equipment that they could immediately turn around and depreciate off. So... it does work a little different up here.
We don't have free health insurance here.
It's true. We've got our drawbacks. Let's see here. Cox Landscaping. What about leasing? Never done it, but thought about it in the current market. I'll give you your take, and I will have my take. So,
if you're going to stay on a residential lot, not a bad way to go. I'm not a fan on leasing. If you're going to do anything besides like stay in the wide open and not nick a tree branch or any rubble, loading a truck coming back. I'm in the business to make money. Like, I don't worry about the paint. I mean, to a point, like, I don't destroy it, but God forbid if a rock rolls back and hits the window or, something gets away from you. I mean, you own it. Those are battle scars, man. Like, you got a story every time you could tell. I definitely like buying something used or buying something new. Leasing, there's a lot of stuff on the back end that you got to have a pretty good salesman to talk to you about some of that stuff. So I'm really not a fan of leasing.
Yeah, so I'm in the same boat. So my thought is there are very, very few guys, and they are out there, that leasing makes perfect sense. You want to be able to flip machines every 3 years. You don't put a crap load of hours on your machines. You're generally doing pretty light duty stuff that you're not worried about the machines getting scratched up or beat up. But what a lot of guys don't realize is outside of... Let me turn your mic down while you're doing that because you're probably blasting everybody out.
I think we broke it.
So you can... spin it. Sorry guys, technical issues.
Hang on a sec.
All right, so unscrew that knob right there.
There we go. All right, I'm readjusting.
All right, we're good. So let's...
It's getting intense here.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. So anyway, what a lot of guys don't realize is they also are looking at track wear or tire wear, depending on what machine you got, scratches in the paint. Like, it's legit like a car lease. And if you mess up in any of those areas, you're going to owe them a pretty fat bill at the end of it. So it's not as beautiful, shiny as, and it's just like car leases. It seems like it'd be awesome to lease a car and be able to flip cars every 3 years, but it's only a select part of the population that really works well for. And that's the way, it is in the equipment world. I've never been a huge fan of leases. I think I've had about 2 circumstances pop up when I was selling equipment that it legitimately made sense to kind of go the lease route. The other thing you have to think about is when you lease a machine, it's less than a payment for a machine had you bought it, but is it significantly less?
No.
And it's really not. Like Rick just said, it's really not significantly less. But what is significant is at the end of that lease, you have no equity in the machine. Like that, you literally hand the keys back over and you get nothing back. Versus if you own a piece of equipment, not only do you have the battle scars and you get to take care of this piece of equipment, it's yours, you get to take it home. But at the end of the day, when you go to sell that thing, especially assuming you've taken care of it, you've got equity in that machine that you can carry forward. So leasing, you're literally just throwing money away on a machine for the ability to rotate every 3 years. So that's leases are, I would say 90% of the time you should shy away from leases.
I'd buy a used piece of equipment before I lease something.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yep. So James brought up a good point. I know we're way behind here that they also use pits to go dump their spoils off at. We were talking about where to find dump sites.
Absolutely.
Gravel pits are a great place. The only downside there is you're going to have to pay. But, I mean, if you're in a pinch and you got to get rid of it and you've bid it into the job, I mean, there's...
Yeah, a lot of the material up here with the pits, once you get like a account and a relationship with them, they'll actually let you dump 90% of your material for free if you're hauling out. So that's a lot of the coordinating. I mean, if you want to just spend a bunch of money, haul to the pit if it's in the big, great. But typically, you gotta have more than one or two jobs kind of in the books going on where we're at with our 7-month season. So we're always stocking material, pre-planning jobs. So you're always looking to keep the profit in your pocket, and anytime you get rid of something for free is great. So
Dig Nation, I'm gonna just point you out right there. He runs Cabelco and Cat.
Nice.
Like, my man, that's awesome. We need more Cabelco in the marketplace. They run right up there with Cat, and Cat makes good machines. Everybody shits on Cat because of their pricing, and they should. I mean, Cat is proud of their stuff, but they also support the snot out of the equipment. So it's one of those.
They support the big guys.
They do.
Up
they
here
do.
At Michigan.
Yep. So, great question here from Little Sketchers. How long do you think you should work for a company before you start doing side jobs? That's a hard one.
If you're an entrepreneur, man, I wouldn't wait too long. I mean, you got to have experience is where it really comes down to. Once you can run a job and fully, execute it from being a laborer to an operator to being able to supervise a crew and give them like assignments, be like, all right, guys, you're going to do A, B, and C today, and you're going to get this done on this residential job or civil job or tree work, whatever aspect you're going on. You got to really be able to be the person from the grunt of the labor to the guy that collects the check to making the deal. You make all your money at the deal. You don't make all your money doing the work. That's just the cost expense. That's already why you see employees at companies. Excuse me, carbonated water here. It's why you hire employees and you make them go out and they do the jobs, the 8 hours a day kind of thing. So I wouldn't wait too long. But the other thing is, you don't want to get yourself into a pickle. You got to have the appropriate licensing, insurance. If you don't have an LLC and you start up a DBA and you jump at it with no insurance, and let's just say you charge this guy $300, cut this tree down, you're in chunking up in the firewood, and maybe gravel his driveway for another $300-400, just giving you a scope of a roundabout idea. And man, it's going great, and you cut down that tree and you chunk it all up, and here comes your gravel truck that is backing up in the driveway, and he spreads the gravel out great, and you're in a rush to go get that money, and you drive the skid steer into the guy's car. You have no insurance. Now that $700-800 that you were looking to go get, not only do you got to fix the guy's car, the obligation, the human right thing to do, this guy has legal aspects, so you got to kind of educate yourself on. Really play it safe. Like, go cut the tree out in the field, go pull some weeds for somebody. Like, you got to look at the scope you're doing, but I wouldn't wait too long. Especially if you got some education experience behind you, and you got to also protect yourself. this industry is very fascinating. The equipment side, just the attachments, everything that we could do. So you jump into it. That's a great idea. Go get it. There's not enough people out there that are hungry to want to go do it. It's a dying trade. It's a dying field. Don't wait. I mean, but just protect yourself. I mean, as far as going out and grading out someone's driveway, I mean, I did it. We all did it back in the day, trying to get started. You didn't have the right stuff. You didn't have the right insurance or the licensing. I was the weekend warrior. You go rent a piece of equipment. I went out there with a shovel and I charged the guy $300, and I was like, this is satisfying. Accomplishing the job on your own is really fulfilling. The excitement's there. The homeowner just being like really happy with what you're doing, and then maybe they lead you to the next one. Where you start getting into like the bigger multiple jobs and needing help and bigger equipment, this and that. Little jobs, definitely. I wouldn't wait too long. Get some seat time, get some experience.
So I just want to tack onto that. So to kind of summarize what he just said, stay at that company until you know whatever task you're going to go do as a company. You need to know it inside and out, because now if you get into a pinch, there's no one to fall back on. There's no one to call. There's no one to save you. There's no one with more expertise that you can call in unless you're going to pay them, because now you're on your own. So make sure you know what you're doing before you leave. The other piece of advice that I would touch on that Rick didn't is put some money in the bank before you decide to go off on your own, because there is a legitimate chance that you're going to just about break even for the first 6 to 8 months. Don't get me wrong, there is a decent chance you could start making money off of the bat, but the other thing you need to account for is, let's say you're making really good money for 3 or 4 months, things are great, you're clipping along, but you didn't have that savings account, and then like here in Michigan, winter hits, and you can't really do the work you were wanting to do in the wintertime, or you have some medical thing come up. The reality is we're in construction, guys, and so you get hurt on the job and you can't work for a month and a half. Do you have the money in the bank to cover your bills for a month and a half, 2 months while you recover before you can go back to work? So that's another aspect that you need to think about before you start off on your own, is get you some cushion in your bank account so you don't have to fold up shop the day, something happens.
But I definitely would start, though, working a full-time job.
Oh, doing the side hustle thing?
Trying to
100%.
tackle stuff on the weekends. Man, sometimes,
100%.
Sometimes I wish I even did that, even today. I mean, you could do so much stuff in the weekend and the pressure's off.
Yeah.
You go Monday to Friday, and then it's like it's fun on the weekend. So I wouldn't wait. I definitely wouldn't wait.
All right, another good question. What piece of equipment do you think would make the most money starting off? I'd say a skid, just because they're so stinking versatile.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You could actually buy the machine and rent the attachments.
Yeah.
You could really go at it two ways. I mean, you could buy attachments and rent a machine monthly. And, if you're not working 12 months straight and you got, let's say, four jobs lined up, you're not obligated. So definitely a skid steer, though. They're like a Swiss Army knife. I'll go from one day doing dirt work to tree work to full-blown fecon, taking down big old trees, to turn around going, oh, hey, we're going to put some silt fence in, so I need a trencher, to next thing you know, I'm carrying a bunch of concrete with the bucket, helping people out. So definitely a skid steer.
So Alan is from the Chicago area, has a channel that he does actually with the son. They go out and film equipment. So, well, welcome back, Alan. Good to see you. His question, I don't know that I can tell you, I don't know the answer to this. You may not either. Operator in Norway told me that Hitachi makes deer excavators. So deer excavators are actually Hitachis with deer paint.
Good question.
I don't know. I don't know the answer. Now, I will say, from being on the equipment manufacturer side or the selling side, most likely it's not the full line. If they do that, it could just be a certain size class. That happens fairly frequently. Case excavators for the longest time were just rebadged link belts. They also had a pairing on their smaller excavators with Kobelco, believe it or not. There was a partnership there. So there are these relationships that go back and forth where you do have rebadged stuff. but it's generally not the full line. So I would definitively say not every John Deere excavator is a Hitachi. There's probably a decent chance maybe like and this is totally pulling right out of my butt here, but maybe like the 850 and the next size up are Hitachis because they really operate in that large hoe space. So I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you. I'm sorry. Let's see here. Let's scroll down. We got good conversation going on in here. All right, Garrett. So let's get to Garrett's question. No, I did not cover your question. I'm sorry. So Garrett actually messaged me before the live stream. He is about to attend a trade school down in Ohio.
That's exciting.
It is exciting. First of all, that's awesome, and congratulations on starting your new career, buddy. Let me look here on my messages because I can't remember the name of the trade school.
How long's your program?
I think he said it's 6. No, it's longer than that. Hang on, and I'll tell you. Dadgummit, where did it go? Oh, I know. It's in the other messenger. See, all right, just a little old man gripe here. I hate it that Facebook separated their business messenger from their Instagram and regular Facebook messenger, because then it's ridiculously hard to find chats, especially when you're live streaming. Here it is. Okay. So it is called Performance Training Solutions out of Ohio. It is a 6-week course. Okay. So they do 3 weeks on smaller equipment, 3 weeks on larger equipment, and they do offer your CCO. So to answer your question on, what was your actual question? I think it was kind of like what to expect and is it a good program?
It's only good as the teacher.
Yeah, so with any of those trade schools, I will say this about your trade school that is unique. The fact that they actually offer crane certifications is good. Awesome, because so many of these trade schools really just offer you an in-house certificate. Like, you're certified to run equipment. And like I've talked about on my channel before, that's the equivalent of I am certified to run a forklift at Home Depot. No one gives a crap about that. Like, that's not a legitimate certification. I cannot go into a warehouse situation and present my Home Depot card and say, hey, I can run your forklift. And that's unfortunately what so many of these tech schools do, is they give you that certificate, and a lot of guys that don't know any better take that and shine it, and put it in a frame and show it to their future employer like it's a diploma, and it's not. It's really an in-house certification. However, the NCCO, which is the National Crane Certification Operator, so whatever the nomenclature is. Anyway, that is a legitimate federal certification, and that is a legitimate license that you have to get in the seat of a crane on any job site in the entire country. There are a select few guys that are grandfathered in so that they don't have to have those. Anybody now has to have a CCO license. So that's awesome. I also like the fact that 3 of those weeks are spent on the small machines, 3 of those weeks are spent on the big machines. You're not going to be an expert on anything, but at least it will give you a decent amount of seat time in all of those machines. But like Rick just touched on, it's also only as good as the instructors. I will say I did go in and do some homework on some of the reviews coming out of that facility, and it did look like they spend a fair amount of time doing one-on-one with you, which is excellent. That's going to get you a much better education. So, forgive me. Go ahead and ask your other question, Garrett, here in the comments, because I can't remember exactly what your other question was. But I am going to say I'm generally not super positive on trade schools, but this one actually sounds like a pretty good one. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, we had a couple people come out of the trade schools into the job sector, and they come running out that they were this equipment operator, and they went to this trade school. And don't be baffled or take it offended when the employer walks up and goes, well, here's the shovel. You're on the grading crew today, and you're also going to lay some sewer pipe. And you're like, oh, man, I got this training, and I ran some bulldozers and excavators. I mean, the seat time and the muscle memory and all this stuff that you're not even going to realize. You're going to be grabbing these controls and pushing and pulling. Sometimes, you could do so much with just wiggling your fingers and yanking these controls around to knowing what just the labor's got to do. So, great way to get familiar. You could get great education, getting a job at an employer too. So you're ahead of the game. I mean, that's a good way to get into the field, but don't expect to come out just running like a wheel loader on a pipe crew or at a gravel pit. I mean, you got to get a little bit of seat time too, but that's a great way to start.
So we'll come back, Garrett, to, I'm assuming, okay, I'm going to come back to your question, Garrett. I'm sorry. I'm kind of working through the comments at the same time here. I do want to step over to Shand, asked, want to go on my own as a heavy equipment mechanic. What are your thoughts on the fact, doesn't have a crane truck? Should I wait and save for the crane truck?
Man, I definitely would have a crane truck.
Yeah.
Lack of help anymore.
That's really going to limit you.
Trying to get someone to help you come pick up this 300-pound object to put a pin in, or you got to take a cylinder off a dozer or a loader or anything like that. Like, you could literally just back up, throw the straps around it, relieve just the pressure to get the pin out, versus like take a sledgehammer and mushroom the end and beat the snot out of it. Definitely have a crane on the truck.
Yeah.
And you could find a nice truck pretty used for I was actually looking at some for like 20-25 grand, higher miles, but the thing came with an air compressor, crane truck. I definitely would have a crane on getting into the heavy equipment industry. I mean, God forbid if someone wants you to do like a track swap or something, and how are you going to get this thing out? I mean, you're looking at 5,000 pounds of iron that you can't even pick up.
So at the end of the day, I have seen some freaking genius guys out there that have managed to piece together some ridiculous contraptions to get the work done. I mean, if you're one of those guys and you think you could pull it off, by all means, go for it.
Absolutely.
But I will say the flip side of that is, if you had a crane truck and you were able to knock a job out in 2 hours, but without your crane truck, it took you 4 hours because you took 2 hours trying to come up with the ingenious system. As much as I want to applaud your ingenious system, it took you 2 hours to come up with it just so you could get 2 hours worth of work done. Obviously, that's not going to be profitable for you. You're going to have a hard time saving up for that crane truck because you're not making much money. So at the end of the day, that's going to have to be a judgment call on your part. But like Rick said, I would highly advise you do the crane truck because so much of this iron is just so stinking heavy. It's going to be almost impossible to do a lot of stuff with a one man with no
and
crane.
That kind of goes back to like clearing the land and this and that. A lot of the guys up here, you call them and they got an hour charge at $125. Then they get out, they assess the situation. Maybe you could just run, get the material. They bill you for that and the hourly charge. But if you're doing something by like the hour and you don't have a crane, man, I'm not going to call you back the next time when I see you out there wrestling for 2 or 3 hours and I watch $250 go out the window and I call the next guy that might have been $100 or $20 more, and he was out and had me up and running because my downtime. So, I mean, if you're changing oil to doing little stuff, I mean, I wouldn't be afraid to get into just owning a service truck and going. One of the mechanics that I knew, that's how he started. So, and he worked his way up to buying a crane truck. Sometimes he had to pay a guy to come out with him, which paying a guy would be cheaper than buying a crane for a truck. So, you got to just look at what you're getting into, but definitely if you don't have the help always around, crane truck all day long.
All right, so here's a good question. Does it make sense to have theft insurance for used heavy equipment?
No.
That's kind of what I was going to say, too.
Let them steal it.
I
mean,
mean,
if you got insurance on it, man, you come get my machine all day long. I give you a new one. So your general liability is there. I mean, you got trailer coverage, truck insurance, but for the machines, typically, I mean, you're going to have $1,000 to $2,000 a year for an item. I mean, no, theft insurance, that should all kind of be into the same policy. Like I look at when I shop around is I need the thing to, if it burns down, if someone steals it, if it's covered on the trailer, typically that will fall into like my liability with my auto insurance for my work, which is a different policy. Like if it falls off the trailer and we get in a wreck. But it should all be looped in. Just theft alone, No, I mean, if you're going to have insurance, you're going to have insurance, and they kind of have like an umbrella of everything that's going to be covered of doing the work on the jobs to if someone stole it. So shop around, man, 3-4 places, see what they offer, get the best bang for your buck.
All right, so we're going to circle back. Sorry to switch gears on you guys. We're going to circle back to Garrett's question. So his question, I did go back through, and then he reconfirmed. He was asking about, he wants to do some traveling. Dude, this is a great industry if you want to do traveling, and you can see some really unique parts of either the country or the world, depending on what you go into.
Absolutely.
So if you're wanting to travel, I would highly advise you get into cranes, get into pipeline work, or get into maritime work. So any sort of marine work, doing piers and stuff like that, those guys a lot of times will go all over the country. I know there are some that you can actually get on that will do international work. If you were to get on with like a deep sea salvage crew as an operator on one of their huge barges they take out, you're going to be all over in international waters. If you're wanting something kind of stateside, getting in with heavy crawler cranes, that's going to have a lot of travel because those travel all over the place wherever they need those mega cranes at. And then pipeline work is notorious for you're going to pretty much live out of a camper. That's what most guys do. So you go buy a $100,000 camper and you tow it around, and that's your house, and you live out of that. But you get to see some spectacular parts of the country. So you do have a ton of options for travel. Anything you want to add to that one?
I would become a crane operator if I was going to travel. It's a huge industry, and craning is just a fascination of building hotels to ships to bridges. I mean, road work everywhere. PCL Construction out of Canada is a global company. They work all over the world, and I mean, if you get in there being a crane operator, I mean, you could be in Hawaii for 6 months to Colorado, over to Asia. Typically a lot of hotels, big ski resorts, you see these monster cranes sitting out there for a long time, and so you also get like a time to travel wherever you're at. I definitely go with the crane. Heavy equipment, typically you could travel, get a job anywhere across the country if you're efficient and a hard worker and show up on time. Not really a lack of travel, but what also interests you. But definitely, if I was going to do it again, man, I'd be a crane operator all day
So
long.
yeah, there's great money in that, and then there's also these kind of weird spin-off businesses, these niche markets that you don't really think about. So when I was down in Texas, we had a company, I think it's HL Chapman out of Leander, runs these massive trenchers, and I'm talking like they trench 30 to 40 feet deep to put in sanitary in like solid limestone. That's why they're based out of Texas, but they also do international jobs. So they'll take those suckers over to Saudi Arabia on barges and do pipeline work over there. So you get into stuff like that. We have I always want to call them DeWitt. It's D-Wind trenching over here on the west side of Michigan. They have a really unique custom built in-house super deep trenchers that are for doing in-place slurry walls, and all they do is travel around the United States. They're very rarely working here in their home state. So I would also say look into some of those kind of weird unique industries. It'll definitely take some looking to find them. But they are out there, and that's a great way to travel and again, see some really unique stuff that no one else gets to see. So I want to go back to Brandon now. If you're not as good at grade work, can you use GPS on a skid to help you stay on grade for like installing septic drain tile? He's always done rough work, never finish.
For the GPS, to get into doing the septic field, because they're so small, man, if you could get it close, you could hand rake it out a lot quicker than time you go spend $20,000, for example, on the GPS equipment.
So I'm gonna jump in here.
Go right ahead.
So there's two things that are really easy to confuse. There's GPS, and then there are like 2D laser grade systems. A 2D laser grade system is not actually communicating with GPS satellites. It's done totally on site with a laser. It is far quicker to set up, far quicker to dial in for your particular job site, and it's going to run you, for a laser grade box, you're probably looking at about $15,000-ish for a skid steer laser grade box. And by the way, that is automated. So you push a trigger in the cab, and once you've dialed in the slope, you can do 2 slopes. You can do your inline slope, and you can set a cross slope. Once you have those dialed in, you hit a button in the cab, and the grade box will automatically carry the grade to the laser. It's going to be about $15,000. If you step up to full-blown GPS, this is what a lot of guys who have never used GPS don't understand. You're going to spend about $60,000 for a base station and a rover. Those come in a kit. It's not like you can selectively pick 1 or 2. So you're going to spend $60,000 for that. Then you're going to have to spend probably another $6,000 to $10,000 to put the GPS equipment on your skid steer or your piece of equipment. Then you're going to have to buy that grade box. So that's just to get set up for GPS. Now, in order to use GPS, you have to get an engineered site plan done for the site you're on. That has to be sent to an engineering firm that specifically, or you can find third-party guys that will take your engineering blueprints and convert them over to the files that need to go into the GPS. That's going to cost you about $250 to $350 depending on the firm. And then you have the file on a little USB drive that you can stick in your skid steer, upload the print to, and now, all of that work and all that cost, you can push a button and drive that skid steer forward, and it will carry every grade on that job. But that just cost you about $100,000 plus every job you're going to have to pay to have that file made up. It's a crap load of time. So GPS, that's why you never see GPS on small jobs. It's always on big jobs. Even mid-sized parking lot jobs, generally ballpark fields, stuff like that, generally guys are working off of a laser grade system because it is significantly cheaper, not only in your upfront costs, but your ongoing costs, because once you own the equipment, it's just a matter of setting it up and dialing in your slopes. So now that being said too, like Rick was saying, even with the 2D system, if you're starting to get into some commercial projects where you have to do some really fine grading, you need to have cross slopes, everything needs to drain a specific way, that's where I would say, okay, step up, go get a 2D laser system, just go spend the 15 grand, learn how to use that really well, and it will save you a significant amount of time, and it will save you from having to have a grade checker out there checking grade for you. But when it comes to septic fields and your smaller jobs, it's honestly not worth the hassle and the setup costs. When you can get it close enough, you can pretty much hand rake it. And in all honesty, when you start doing fine grading, within 3 or 4 weeks, I would say you're pretty well dialed in on fine grading in these machines. So, obviously there will be days where it's more challenging for you. But again, to go say it justifies you spending $15,000 on this setup over here, that really at the end of the day, what it's doing is it's hindering your development of your skills. I would say absolutely not for those smaller jobs. And go ahead if you want to add to that.
No, I mean, definitely, what's your return on investment? How long, how many jobs? And if you're going to be able to use it, versatile. I could put 2 guys out there, and as fast as I could bring the sand or the stone and the pipe and everything, I mean, they could be installing it, building the field as fast. Like, I could just dump it in a pile, and they could knock it around. And I'll be back in like 5-6 minutes, 1-2 guys. I mean, $15,000, for example, for like a GPS 2D system or something. I mean, I get a lot of labor done for something like that. I mean, if you're really turning big commercial jobs, like doing whole subdivision septic fields, I might start thinking about that, because you're going to be into a pretty hefty price tag on the job. I could see that, but just these little 1,200 square foot, like a 30 by 40 septic field is pretty common here. I definitely hone your skills, and within like a month or 2, I mean, you'll get pretty comfortable.
See that? Hone your craft.
I like that.
Available at dieselandironproductions.com.
Support the guy, man. He's got great products. He's making a move, and he's getting info for
right.
you guys.
That's right.
I got to work tomorrow, and I'm dragging him out to bed.
He is. I'm working with Rick tomorrow, yeah.
So we're going to be here till we're over with, but yes. support him. He's doing it for you guys.
So, a good question from Lil Finkel. What do you see coming down the pipe as far as equipment manufacturers helping companies recruit employees? The honest answer to that one, Finkel, is jack shit. Honestly, the manufacturers don't have any dog in the hunt really when it comes to helping people recruit into the industry. They're more concerned with getting you excited about their equipment. As far as companies setting up equipment demos at high schools, the sad truth of the industry is the whole reason I do this channel is because no one in the industry is really focused on getting people into the industry. And it's going to take people like me. It's going to take people like Taylor up there with Kim White Construction. It's going to take guys that are in the industry that are going out of their way to build excitement about the industry. And ultimately my goals for this channel kind of go beyond just the channel. What I ultimately want to do is kind of get into a situation where I've got enough presence in the industry that I can start going into some of these tech schools, revamping some of their programs so they're a little more geared towards real world experience. Rick and I, believe it or not, have talked about the possibility of opening some sort of a school at some point down the road. Who knows if that will happen? But I would also like to start talking with, once I get some clout and I can start talking with Kat or Komatsu or Case or whoever it ends up being, I would love to start setting up demos and stuff like that at high school, specifically targeting those kids, and telling them there is an alternative out there to the higher education system that isn't a fallback option. Like you have multiple paths you can choose from, and one is not better than the other. They are equivalent paths, and that's the message that is getting lost right now. Is we are the lesser pick. We are for the guys who can't make it in the higher education world, and that's ultimately what I want to go change. You guys are the start of that. As this channel grows and I get more clout in the industry, I'll hopefully have the influence to be able to start making those waves. But it's going to take people like me. It's not going to come from manufacturers or likewise the majority of your companies. It's not going to come from.
That was getting out of high school.
You finish this answer. I'm going to hit the bathroom. I'll be right back.
That was coming out of high school. Everybody was, you got to go to college if you want to be something or go somewhere, do anything. You can't make money being in the trade field. There's no money in it. And the realization of it, you could work and make anywhere from $40,000 to $150,000 a year in this trade working for a bigger company. It's just amazing that they would do such a thing. And now we have come into, I've got these guys now that have no education and they're looking for a job and they're just sitting here and they're looking at the telephone. The absolute industry is lacking of people that just can't put the cell phone down, get to work, do as you're told, to learn. The older guys, I got the taste of the older mentality, the real operators that were so talented without GPS. They didn't, I don't even know if they got to run the electric over hydraulics. They just had these big old hydraulic controls, run the bulldozers and excavators, and they were some of the skilled talent that was out there, the raw talent that you really had to have. And I got to learn from them as a labor, like when we get talking about where I was from and this and that. I learned from these guys that, they would straight up yell at you if you couldn't shovel fast enough or hook up the pipe to the cable. And the industry is just lacking. Like when the crash happened back in 07, 08, they kept those people. And it was a big rush for doctors and lawyers and teachers. Like we had this big old deal up here. And now every aspect in the field is everyone's searching for operators. You could go to any company right now if you got experience and get a job, and they're paying phenomenal money. This is a great field, guys. And there's just a lack of knowledge, the lack of know-how, the motivation. It's a rough field. You can make phenomenal money. And it doesn't cost you nothing. All you got to do is show up with your $125 boots, $60 worth of clothes, and they'll give you the gloves, hard hat, and off off you go to make $100 for today or 150. And they'll teach you. You know, whether you go to trade school and you learn that way, or you're in the field and I mean you're at the school of hard knocks and they just teach you right from the labor to the one operator don't show up and hey, jump in that machine. And this is just a phenomenal field to be in, and the hard work. I was telling about the old timers, the raw talent that we had.
Oh yeah.
And then remember when we had that big push, like go be a doctor, go be a lawyer and a teacher, and you'll make all this money. I mean, I still got friends, believe it or not, still trying to pay off college debt.
Yep.
You know, and I showed up with a $150 outfit, $200 outfit, and got paid to learn something. I mean, it's such a great field.
It is. It's a great field.
Really.
So Travis, I know I'm way late on this, but thanks for watching, man. He said he was looking forward to another live stream.
Right.
Brandon, he said, appreciate you guys being so sincere in your answers. Don't have a lot of people to get information from, so thanks for taking the time to explain in such detail. Absolutely. Thank you guys for supporting us. I mean, the fact that we're sitting here rolling with this conversation, when I originally started these live streams, I knew there was probably like a 70% chance I was going to be sitting in a room with a camera talking to myself for half of the evening. And within like my first live stream, I actually ended up going live for 45 minutes or so because people kept coming in. And all I wanted to do was kind of announce that I was going to start the live stream thing. Like, you guys have been phenomenal because you've kind of picked up the slack from the get-go. So I really appreciate you guys supporting the channel. It's really coming along, and I'm really excited with the progress we're making. So let's see here. You're in Central Indiana. Garrett says he's in Central Indiana, so Michigan would be a good place to get hired at. Dude, in all honesty, Garrett, there's so much work out there. I was talking to a guy from California the other day that said they're hurting. Guy from New York the other day said they're hurting. I've talked to multiple guys from Florida, Seattle. Yep. So there's work everywhere, buddy. Pick your spot.
Go south. It's warmer.
So Brandon, good question. How should a farm drainage contractor expand into utility construction? Way up here.
A farm drain contractor into utility construction?
Yeah, utility construction. So my thought would be
advertising.
So advertise, first of all, I would say market research. Obviously, you need to get your ducks in a row to know that you've Rick touched on this earlier. Make sure you got all your certifications and licenses that you're able to do the work. And then I would actually say, go dabble, go look for the project that you can do an experiment on. You're not going to lose your ass on if you do a poor job. It's not going to diminish your reputation too bad if you do a poor job. And go dabble in one that's not super big. So if it doesn't go well, you don't lose everything on it. And that way, if you screw up, it was a little costly lesson, but it was a little lesson as opposed to a really big lesson because you got in way too deep, way too fast. I would say that's how I would personally do it.
Absolutely. God, I got to agree with you on that answer. But, you just brought up a point, though, to go back up a couple conversations for a minute ago when we were talking about getting into industry. So I got my builder's license and a couple other certifications and licensing underneath me. And COVID-19 actually brought something to my attention last year that first starting out, getting into the industry, doing side work, this and that. When it comes back to the licensing, I got an email from the state of Michigan because I'm in their system for licensing. And they were actually going after people doing jobs over $500 if you weren't a licensed contractor. Oh
yeah, you told me about that.
The state of Michigan was cracking down on people.
Yeah.
Even just being the Joe Blow in the pickup truck doing jobs, they were going after people. So I just popped up when you guys were reacting.
Yeah. Dirt Warrior says, hey, I was thinking about buying a used skid, only ran Kubota, wondering which brands in your opinion to look for and look out for.
I love Kubota.
Kubota makes a good skid. Yeah, Kubota makes a really good skid.
Big cab.
Yeah, yep, big cab. It's tall. That's one of their only
Yes.
disadvantages is because the overhead door, they are taller, so you need to make sure you got
You
overhead
can't get into a
clearances.
garage with them.
I was just about to say, if
Yeah.
you plan on doing any sort of residential concrete work where you're going to have to get in the garage, don't go buy a Kubota. You will not fit.
Be
but-
versatile, man. Get
Yeah.
something that could do multiple tasks. I mean, God, you have someone to call you up and maybe 2 or 3 neighbors of, man, he just wants all the concrete ripped out, and you know a concrete guy that's replacing it, but he's so busy, but you don't have the equipment that could fit in there, so you missed out, you know, and you're going to go try to tackle it with a jackhammer now and an air compressor. So
Yep.
if you had the right equipment and some forks, you could rip that concrete out. So don't just always look at the best price on every single aspect. Be versatile. Make sure that you could use this in all aspects. I mean, a lot of people they get that tunnel vision on, man, I could buy this piece of equipment, it's a great deal, but
I'm only going to do this.
yes, but
Yeah.
it doesn't connect to this, or you know, being versatile of, you know, I do a lot of tree work, then I got to do a lot of dirt work, and that machine would have been a better machine buying something smaller with a high flow than a bigger machine. So Kubota is a great brand. I definitely would just check into what you're looking to really do. I mean, if you're out in the field and grading residential lots, I mean, a Kubota would be really nice. They're great machines.
So kind of an overall general thing I could say is we've touched on this tonight. I've touched on it in multiple live streams before. Whichever one has the best dealership support, honestly, that's way more important than what color the paint is. So that's one aspect. One aspect too, I will tell you, you know, to kind of name a brand, stay away from the new Takahachis that have emissions on them. They're having some
horrible.
they're having some really bad emissions problems, and that's not a knock on Takahachi. They make great skid steers, and that's why it really hurt me when I heard that they were having the issues they are. But again, being practical for you as a business owner and having uptime, stay away from the Tox until they get that all figured out. Cat honestly makes a pretty solid machine. They don't, you know, stay away from the ridiculous undercarriage systems that they've got on some of them. I don't even remember what they call them. Go for the standard undercarriage on a Cat machine.
Is that independent suspension to track?
I don't remember what all it can do. Yeah, but it's crazy, and it's also got the hamster cage sprocket like the ASV has.
Oh, yep.
So ASV is another one. Unless you specifically are doing some sort of a low ground pressure application, stay away
Forestry
from
mulching.
ASV. Forestry mulching. Okay, let's talk ASV. Outside of that, the ASV undercarriage is really expensive to maintain. I know that it's a lot more sensitive to damage than other systems, so I would kind of say steer away from those. Outside of that, man, it's dealership support. Whatever you can get serviced with, go buy one of those machines and then make sure it's in good condition. James asked, do you need to be licensed to do a septic in Michigan? Yes, you do. In fact, I don't know of a municipality that you don't have to be licensed to do a septic for in the U.S. Could be wrong, but Dirtworks asked, how do you get into bigger private projects?
Word of mouth.
Word of
by
mouth.
Getting out there, doing the jobs. Being a man of your word or woman of your word, start to finish, do as you say. Everything that's on the contract, you satisfy. You don't neglect the job. You don't just do the bare minimum. It's just like working for somebody. You know, the guy that's putting in the extra effort, people notice it. Make your jobs, even if it takes you an extra hour, make your job shine. Put up signs. I mean, yardage signs. I got yardage signs, and those are, man, you can pick up 4 or 5 jobs every once in a while off of a $20 sign to flyer into networking. But typically, you'll run across somebody that knows other people that are looking for something bigger, and you might have did a job for them. Like, you might have did a job for the drain commission guy that's the head honcho, and you didn't know, and he just needed a ditch cleaned up in his yard. To next thing you know, the drain commission calls you and they want a mile of drain ditch cleared out in a farm field. Just accomplishing what you started, and don't give up. Advertising and just letting people know that you're there. I mean, nobody knows you're there unless your stuff's advertised, you're letting people know, and you're over the media, you're over the internet. I actually still carry postcards. I'll go to Tractor Supply or see where you got one of those little push pin billboards, and I've had some big companies call off of something I was advertising for something small because the one contractor couldn't fulfill it. He took too much work, and they're like, hey, are you capable of this? Absolutely, if you have the skill set and the equipment. That's really how it goes. I mean, you got to start off small to get somewhere big. The guys that get to the top, they didn't just walk out and go, I'm going to open up this business and I'm going to be this big, magnificent company and going to take on these big $1 million projects. I mean, we're going to fight over the couple $100 starting out to the thousands to the 10,000s. I mean, get in line and learn and just let people know you're there.
And so that's another point that I want to make there is, so word of mouth obviously is one of the easiest ways to get into those bigger projects. So you did a smaller job and it turned out really nice and the homeowner was happy. And hey, by the way, I know this guy down the road and he's about to start this, $60,000 to $80,000, $100,000 renovation on his place. I don't know if we're talking landscaping or what kind of projects, but that's obviously the easy way. The more costly way that is probably going to work better for you and get you quicker results is you need to go advertise and market yourself. So the first thing is have the confidence. If you did a great job on the smaller projects, what's really changing stepping up to the big ones? You might need a little more manpower. You might need some bigger machines. Both of those are very easy obstacles to work around. Don't lose your confidence just because it's a bigger job that your skill set isn't going to apply somehow. So that's number one. Number two is I would say you need to start marketing yourself in a way that reflects that you're capable of taking on those projects. I'm actually going to do a down and dirty most likely in the near future on the importance of having a website in the dirt industry. And one of the topics I'm going to talk about is you need to present yourself as a legitimate business. And if you don't have not just a website, if you don't have a very nice, put together, well-organized website,
absolutely,
you look like a fly-by-night guy. You could do great on this $200,000 landscape project over here, and it looks phenomenal. But if you have a blank white page with 4 pictures of this really pretty landscaping on it that looks like it was made in Microsoft Word, that doesn't make you look legitimate. That makes you look like you're ripping off somebody else's work and trying to pass it off as yours. So I would say you do need to spend some time focusing some marketing dollars on a really nice website. And then I would say that's where you hit Facebook marketing and you start doing some very targeted ads towards those higher end customers. Again, I'm assuming you're talking about kind of a landscape residential when you say private projects, but I could be wrong. But that's kind of how I would, if you were asking like the physical steps to take to go do that, those would be my steps to take, is kind of orient yourself from a marketing perspective to go after those and then go laser beam in on them with some targeted advertising and focus. And obviously it's one of those things where the more big jobs you do, the more big jobs you're going to fall into, because now people are looking apples to apples at what jobs you're doing. So that's what I would say. Travis, great point. So he said between roofing, he was going back and forth between, I believe, taking over your dad's roofing business or uncle's, I can't remember. But he said he's probably going to go into the construction, running equipment. Nice. It's better to chase the dream than the money. 100%. Like we talked about last live stream, dude, if you're not happy doing what you're doing, it doesn't matter how much money you're making. Between you and me, I could have made a crap load more money doing bank consulting, and I would have hated every day of my life doing it.
You get the experience in the years, though. They will pay you in this field to make some money.
That
and
is
probably
true.
sit in the heat and the air conditioning if you're a good operator. Yep. The money's there, and you could chase a dream, and who doesn't love playing with big Tonka toys?
Absolutely.
This stuff is just fun to be around.
Yep. Brandon, to go back to your comment about clarifying between GPS, laser grade, dude, don't even feel bad. There's so many different systems out there in the industry right now that half the time we on the sales side would also get confused back and forth, so don't even worry about it. The only reason I know this so intimately is because I sold it for a while, and so I got to drill down into the details, but don't feel bad.
You got to learn to run that grade pole and know how to use a laser.
He actually said
he's a lot of jobs.
Yeah,
man.
He said he started out as a grade checker.
There you go.
But most grade checkers were working off the old laser systems.
Right.
Now grade checkers on the big jobs are primarily running around with the GPS rover.
Yep.
And that's your new grade checker.
Setting little hubs or
Yep.
telling them.
Exactly. So let's see here. Mr. Hogg, bit off topic, but I'm working it as greaser for a few months, and I've talked with the employer, said they would train me on a machine in April once I'm out of school. What should I expect? The honest thing to expect is majority still is going to be shovel grease time, but they're going to start working you slowly into that seat, and it's going to be doing small piddly stuff, and don't take offense to that. You know, one of the things that most operators don't understand in this industry is the cost of the equipment. I will tell you, if they put you in anything over like a 315, 316 cat excavator, you're sitting on about 200 to, well, depending on the size, let's call it that size, you're sitting on almost a $200,000 piece of equipment. A mid-size loader is going to run you probably 250 to 300,000. This equipment is not cheap. It is really, really expensive. It's expensive to run. It's expensive to repair. So an employer's not going to take you, and because you express an interest, they're not going to throw you in a 349, which is like a 600, probably $500,000 or $600,000 piece of equipment. They're not going to throw you in the seat of a 349 and tell you to load dump trucks, because if you screw something up, it's either that $600,000 piece of equipment or it's that $250,000 nice Peterbilt truck that you just slammed into the side of. So just expect some really easy tasks at first. Take it. Be grateful for what you get. Another great piece of advice I'll give you is offer to stay late and do some stuff off the clock to get more seat time. There's
Absolutely.
a good chance that employer will actually offer to pay you because you're taking the initiative to learn more, and it will get you more seat time. You'll move up quicker. And once you show that you've got initiative in this industry, your career is going to skyrocket. That's what the industry is lacking right now, is people that take the initiative. So I hope that answers your question. Anything you want to add to that?
The bigger the iron, the more efficient you got to be.
Yep.
You're starting on a little mini hoe, skid steer, a little dingo, a little ride-on track machine. You know, they're going to probably be a little more lenient with you as you learn, but the bigger the equipment, the more production, the more money that's got to be pumping per shovel per hour.
Yeah.
Really, because they're going to be paying you when you get to the bigger iron, and thrive. I mean, come really efficient, because if you could come really efficient on a mini excavator, you can move into a 315 and be just as productive. A little bit bigger, you get into a 315 to a 349. Now you're doing something, man. You're moving dirt. You're getting paid probably a little more money. Time's money, though. Each scoop is time. There's a company up here, Stante, that will time his excavators to the T, putting in pipe. And if you don't lay X amount of X amount of pipe per minute, you know, that machine's got to be from here to here in a rotation of like a minute and a half. It has to be from here to 15 feet deep in the hole, and he times it. And if it's slowing up, like, he knows when his pumps on the machine are wearing out. He'll call
really?
Cat, and he'll threaten Cat. If they can't get someone, he'll be like, I'm changing over to Komatsu. They'll be right out to do it. So the bigger the iron, the more efficient. I mean,
and that's a good point too. So you have to understand that in the smaller machines, it's about just kind of getting the motions down, learning how to operate the machine. But as you progress through those machines, when you start getting to the big ones, you start getting into efficiencies. If you've watched my excavator tips and tricks video, I do start to talk about some of these efficiencies. And there's a lot of old timers in the industry that say it's all a bunch of BS. It's not a bunch of BS. When you start running the big iron, it's not BS. These are things that your employer has a timer going. They're looking at load counts at the end of the day. And so you start getting into technical aspects of operating, such as, you know, not bringing your stick in past 90 degrees when you're doing any sort of mass excavating, you know, lining up where you're sitting on top of the pile so that you don't have to elevate your boom as far to get into the back of the truck. The way you orient your trucks backing up to you, whether you're doing a 2 truck stack side by side or you're doing them all off of the right side of the machine, like how these all play into how efficient you are. And at the end of the day, it's your call as the operator as to how you set that operation up to move the most material possible. So there's a lot of technical aspects that go into running that big iron. So don't expect them to put you in anything big anywhere close to being right off the bat. There's a reason most of your large excavator operators are generally older seasoned operators, is because that is you can make or break a project running a 385 excavator
all day long.
So, let's see here. What do you think the most important thing to invest in? Let me see here. What do you think is the most important thing to invest in for a small excavation company? Working equipment?
Yeah, that's a good one.
I guess the honest truth is...
So if I was going to... I mean, I guess, are you trying to stage everything? Like, if I was going to start into a company, you know, like an old 1-ton pickup truck, a dump trailer that I can move equipment in, possibly haul some material and dump it out, go chase some material, some pipe, bring it to the job, still move the equipment, be able to dump attachments or something out. If a machine wasn't on site, laser, really just the basics. And you got to remember, what are you trying to accomplish, and what kind of service are you looking to provide? That's a very open and honest, hardly question to ask.
So sorry, I'm reading through some of these comments trying to get to more questions. We use a slope laser and receiver on the excavator to dig a ditch, but finish grading is putting the time in the seat. Yes, seat time is where you get that. I talk about that all the time, especially my dozer videos. Your ass level, that just comes with seat timing. You gotta have it.
Muscle memory.
Somebody made the comment up here. I think it was Finkel. Where was that? Yeah, Finkel was talking about you could be a pharmacist and work for Walmart at 110 grand a year with 6 to 8 years of education, or you could go into this industry and make 70 grand a year with no student loans. I'll take it a step further. Here in Michigan, where you got the union, you can work crazy hours during the summer, and then you can flip over to running cranes and doing some crane work in the plants, where for the auto manufacturers, guys are easily pulling down $100,000 to $120,000 a year. They work year round. You work a lot of hours, but at the same time, if it's what you love doing, I'd way rather make the 120 grand with no student debt on this side of the table than I would sitting behind a freaking glass wall in Walmart filling prescriptions all day. I'm sorry.
All day long.
That would be miserable.
Advance your education. Don't stop.
Yes.
Don't stop.
Let's see here. LR, thank you. He said that we're good teachers. We're clear and concise. Thank you. Appreciate that. I think he was really just complimenting me, but I'll extend it to you.
Right. I'll take the credit. I'm here today.
Should you talk to municipalities to find utility jobs, or how exactly would you find them? I understand. Okay.
That's typically a bid job.
Yeah, so Brandon, it sounds like what you're talking about is more you're starting to get into government work or large-scale civil projects, and in which case that is a bid system. You would have to get set up as someone who can bid on municipal projects, and that's where you cross over. You're no longer really talking the private sector at that point in time. Generally, I'm trying to think on like new subdivisions and stuff, putting in new, that's all going to be
developers.
Yeah, that's going to be developers.
Municipality, you could go for the state of Michigan, and you could go down to the one of the main offices and fill out your paperwork there, and you really think you're gaining some traction and really getting somewhere. But when you go and you start looking who's on that contractor list, it's you and like 500 other people. So, and they typically have a lot of go-to contractors. You got to wait your turn. Like someone mess up, they call you, and a lot of it's sealed bid. Sometimes they'll bring you in. I've been on some of them. You'll bring your bid to the table, and they're just looking for a third bid, right? And it's really hard to get into. It's really who you know, and not always what you know on certain aspects of it, but trying to get into like the certain cities and the counties, go knock on their door and rattle their cage. I want to become a preferred contractor, and how do I go about that? What insurance qualifications? Maybe you got $1 million policy and you got to bump it up to $2 million. Maybe you got to, a lot of times I've had to list how many employees and equipment and your capability for the job, and they don't want this to take 3 months. They want this done in 25 to 45 days. So sometimes it's not about the money. It's about when this going to get done by a deadline, because they have bigger projects going on. But I'd go knock on the door. It doesn't hurt to ask and talk. But get out there. Yeah,
but at the same time, you are really entering into a totally different ball game when you start going down that path. It is a whole different animal. It's no longer you lose the direct person to person aspect of it. Like Rick was just talking about sealed bids. The way those generally work is they have X amount of bids that they have to take, and everyone brings a sealed envelope to the table, and then depending on if it's a government organization or not, you may not even get to see the results of those bids. If it is a government entity, they will probably have a reading where everyone sits down and you can attend. They will publish the results of the bid, but once it's out there, you don't get to go back and change it and try to undercut anyone. The numbers are what they are. So it is a totally different animal, and I honestly am not really experienced enough and have the expertise to tell you how to go start pursuing that.
Your numbers got to be on. They are precise, and they're You start a contract and you underbid it for $100,000, you're eating that $100,000, or you're in court with a lawsuit. So
yep.
Just
so
get
you
that
gotta
pencil
have
sharp.
All your ducks in a row in that business.
Yep. But go get it. There's good money in it, and there's a lot of work.
Yeah. So, by the way, coming back to our cat undercarriage, it's the MTL versus CTL, so the multi-terrain undercarriage. I couldn't remember what it was called, but yes, multi-terrain undercarriage. That's like James said, it's a much better ride, but it's way more expensive to repair, and if I remember right, it's way more prone to breaking too. So, let's see here, James. Yes, elaborate on your platforms that you're advertising on, because I think you primarily are using Facebook, right?
I use a little bit of everything. We got a thing called like the Marketeer. It's the local newspaper that gets blasted around. I would do some marketplace here and there, with a little bit of Facebook ads. I'll do a lot of networking. Sometimes, like, I'll call up some of my old employers I used to work for and had good relationships with, and I'll call them up and tell them what I'm doing and this and that. Sometimes they'll point you in the right direction too. Networking, but social media is huge. I mean, you go down the road, and how many people do you see looking at their phone, driving a car, walking through the store? Everybody's just glued
That's irresponsible. We can't condone that.
Right, but everyone's looking to it. So look around. What's everybody doing? They're glued to this 6x8 telephone. And if you can make your business flash in front of them, it's a great way to go. Brian already touched it before. Website. It makes you look legit. But I have people hit me up on my website for work. Google. Google's a big one. Google's a huge search engine. Search engines are a good way to go. Get on them. Get your stuff there. Again, nobody knows you're there unless you're out there making yourself known. So, clothing, Diesel and Iron right here. You see he's got it. Clothing, I mean hoodies, hats, business cards, postcards.
And by the way, especially in your line of work with what you guys are doing, that is a marketing cost. You need to make these expecting to hand them out, not to sell them. Like Correct. That is a marketing tool for you.
It's cost of doing business. So You're putting the money out with a return on investment. You hear people talk about the ROI. I want people to wear that because, man, look at that. And there's no phone number on there. Get your phone number on there. Get kind of like what you do, maybe on the side there. Let people know what you're doing. Pictures are huge. Before and after pictures, whether it's on postcards, social media, hoodies. I mean, let them know what you do. A name is catchy. You got to have a good name, but you got to really just let people know what you're doing out there.
So Garrett, to go up to your question, was looking at applying to gravel pits. To answer that question, so first of all, I applaud you, but I do want to be realistic with you. Gravel pits, generally, that is a pretty coveted position. They have really good pay. They have really good benefits. Most of the time, it's one of those positions you get into and you retire. So you're going to have a lot of competition on that one. To answer your second part of the question about how to fill a truck, the way gravel pits work is you go in with a radio and you will check in at the scale house, let them know who you are, what company you're with. Then you head back to where they actually load. Generally, your loader operator is on a second channel that is separate from the scale house. You will flip to that channel. You tell the loader operator, I need 13 ton. My triaxle was a 13 ton load. So I tell him I need 13 ton of 21A. And then you'd meet him over at the pile, loader operator come over, and all of those loaders in those pits have scales in them. And you'll notice if you ever see a video or you go through a pit yourself, you'll notice that the operator takes a scoop, they raise it all the way up, and then they bring it back down to carry it. When they raise it all the way up, they're actually there's a point where the scale knows that once you get the boom arms above a certain point, it knows to take a weight measurement. And so what they'll do oftentimes is the first scoop isn't enough to get you all the way there, so they just weigh that one to store it in the computer. They go dump it into the truck, then they come back for their second scoop, they raise it up and they weigh it, and they see whether they need a little more or a little less. Most of the time the operator gets a little more than they need because they can pour a little out. They'll drop their load back down, they'll rescale it, and then they'll plug it into their computer that they've got the full 12.98 ton or whatever, dump it in the truck, and then you go scale out. So it's not something that you're having to estimate from the cab. The loader is actually giving you that information in real time. So little in-depth answer, but now you know.
Spot on.
So Cox, great point. Yeah, God help you if you aren't getting full buckets, especially on a production job. That is, oh Lord. So I went and videoed a site out in Nebraska this past summer, and it's on the YouTube channel. I've got some drone footage and everything. I've actually seen multiple comments on that video bitching at the operators of the two 349s that were loading trucks because they were not getting full buckets. And that was the same bitch I had while I was on the job. I wanted to go scream at the operators. Like, they were filling the buckets like 3/4 of the way. These are 349s. Like, they're they should be two passing these belly dumps, and a lot of times it was taking them 3 buckets because they weren't getting a full bucket. It's like,
right, just don't get too big of spoils and throw it all over the truck.
Well, these were all on site though. They were staying on site. There was literally no excuse. I was like,
you know what, go get that extra scoop. But yeah, off-road truck, this and that, let it have it. Drop the bombs.
Yes,
full load.
Yes. Travis asks, so when I get in the industry working my way up, will the first couple years be tough, starting out on the shovel, stuff like that? Yes, 100% yes, but this business makes a man out of you. I mean, not to sound like an ass or
you get paid to work out.
You do.
It's
you get paid
great.
to work out.
But the biggest thing that people kind of don't put in perspective, everybody wants to get to the top. Everybody wants to run that piece of equipment. You're only as good as that labor that's working for you. So if you can't perform a job as a labor and understand like what they're doing, like if we're tying into a sewer main and looking at the cave-ins and tying into everything, I mean, if you can't put that in perspective as a labor and understand your job, you're going to struggle being like in the excavator helping the new guy that doesn't know anything. I mean, I've had guys that I've hired come with me and we'll go put in sewer mains and they don't have a clue what they're doing, and I'm running the job from the seat, helping them, getting down there, doing a couple of tie-ins and back in. So the more you learn as a labor, learn fast so you could get into the equipment, but be proficient. And you're only as good as, like, sometimes you'll see these phenomenal operators out there, and what's really making them shine is that labor. So don't be afraid to get out there and shovel hard, get the job done. No one likes to do it. It's part of the job. That's why you get paid. It's called work. You're going to get these calluses on your hand.
I was going to say, we're still doing it. Like most good operators.
I make Brian do it.
That's yeah. Actually, he's pretty good. He actually does most of the shoveling for me. So I'm like, okay.
It. Like, guys, I own the business, right? And Brian, not that Brian won't get out there and do the work. I enjoy it. And I learn to work with other people too. And my pride's not too good that I'm in charge and I got to go run the machine. Hey, look, you could do this job and I'll get out here in the labor. And being a really kind person, he's like, you run the equipment yourself. Why don't I do the labor? And, it's being efficient. He's actually a better laborer than an operator sometimes. And then vice versa. He's a very good operator than a laborer. It's like, depends if he drinks that Monster on the way to work or not,
That's
right?
True. Or you put me in that little Bobcat E26.
Like, you run some Bobcat equipment. Like, you get into the small little... mini excavator Bobcat, and I thought Brian was this horrible operator.
Yeah, he gave me so much crap.
And then I get in this thing, and I got a lot of seat time. I had to stop what I was doing, call Brian, laughing, and I'm like, dude, I thought it was just you. This machine is horrible.
It was awful.
It was horrible, but getting out there, being a laborer, doing a good job, and then a lot of the times, like when you get in these machines, it's intimidating. You don't really know what you're doing. Exactly. Like, you understand maybe I got to do this and that, but you don't see the blind spots and whatever. But as a laborer, I learned a lot with the old timers, the skill set that they had watching these guys, how good they were, the way they lined up, like just the little stuff like digging a basement. You'll notice most good operators will spin and they will have the drives on an excavator in the back. So as they're teetering, all the weights back there with the counterweight, and those drive motors are like 10,000 pounds a piece or something. So you'll notice certain things. And just being an operator right from the get-go, you kind of don't grab the concept. Sometimes it's like too far fast forward. But you get out, you be that labor, you learn so much. But expect the work. And honestly, if you're not out shoveling and not out doing the work, God, if you don't have a very good work ethic being a laborer, I'm going to have a hard time believing you're going to be a good operator because you're not putting in the work ethic. Because sometimes I'll go out do some of these jobs, or you see some of the jobs. We did that monster job with just two guys. People thought I was crazy when I said, man, Brian, we're going to do this in 2 weeks with both of us. Brian was out of his mind. He's like, there ain't no way we're going to do this. Well, guess what? We turned this
knocked
job
it out
in 2 weeks. Brian wasn't actually filming all the time. He was out there laboring, raking, and being a phenomenal operator. You could put things where you are. So then, man, my spoil pile is getting too high or too low. I need to get out there and kick it around before, I rip the brick off with this rock or whatever. But getting out there, you're never too good to be a labor operator at the same time. And a lot of the smaller companies, you're going to be a labor operator. You're going to be the guy that has to do the raking to the shoveling and then jump back in that machine. And sometimes that sets you apart and it puts you into the equipment further longer. Next thing you know, you're working the Saturdays. They're asking you to come in for that extra overtime, and you're going to run the loader, or they're going to train you on this, right? Because you're there, you're dedicated. So there's no shame in that game, man. Start there. Learn it, do it, become good, and rock on. I mean, I love having a phenomenal labor. It just makes the operator job so much easier, and you could talk to each other without even saying a word. It's just so enjoyable to work with someone that just loves doing their job. So it's good.
So Brandon, coming back to your comment up here in Kentucky, if you're a minority or ran by women, you get put to the front of the line for bids. That's not just Kentucky. I want to say that's actually a U.S. thing, but I know for sure it's the same way in Michigan, which is why Dan's Excavating set up their trucking company as Danny's in his daughter's name, so that it was minority owned. And for, I want to say it's like 7 years, you get preferential treatment. So there are advantages to opening an LLC in a spouse's name if you can, to get you that leg up if you're going after those bids. So let's see here. What's the best piece of equipment for someone trying to get into the earth moving grading business? I kind of go back to our conversation earlier about the versatility of a skid.
A skid and a mini excavator, man. On
If you can do the two of those,
trailer.
you're a deadly combination, and you can do a crap load of work with them.
Sometimes it's not as efficient as like a bulldozer coming in on a job, but dude, you can move so much dirt with like a CX80 and a TV 450 skid, and really just hammer it out with two guys. There's not a wrong answer in that, but definitely a skid steer, and then a mini excavator. It's got to come into a close second for me.
Yep, I'm right there with you. Those two would be the. I would say it's really hard to do this industry with one machine, just because you're either going to be in a grading application or you're going to be in a trenching application, and rarely do you stay just in one or the other. And so to have the two, they excel at what each one of them does, as opposed to, you guys all know my feelings on backhoes.
Oh God!
Yeah.
A backhoe.
Hate backhoes. Hate backhoes.
And sometimes though you can't get a bulldozer or bigger equipment through, but all you got is a mini excavator and a skid steer. Like I dug a 4,000 square foot basement once with a little mini excavator and a skid steer because we only had a 6 foot wide gate to move. I don't know.
Oh, dude,
500 yards.
That backyard that we filled, I plowed all that with that CX80. So, and that was easily a job that you could have fit a D3 if not a D5 on.
Right.
And I managed it with a CX80 pushing all that dirt. So you can get away with doing a lot with a mini.
Being a good operator and really understanding your skill set, putting these things right to the extreme without breaking them. I mean, you could pick up a mini excavator, skid steer, and do pretty close to the same, believe it or not, like grading off a yard. Yeah, a skid would be a little faster, but I'm not going to bring a skid steer there to slick off a yard when we got a mini excavator with a blade. So, man, that's a 1-2 combination there for me.
Hey, James, just saw your comment. By the way, thanks for hanging out, man. Appreciate you. We'll catch you on the next one. So another good question: how do I go from an operator to a supervisor? You go first, Rick. I've been taking the first swing at everything.
I've been watching the cracks. Being good, being efficient, taking care of your guys. I mean, when I look for a guy working for me to basically go out onto a job, I'm looking at, like people think of customer service. Customer service, you're only as good as your team. So being able to take your employees and help them shine, helping your crew, keeping excellent notes, like a pad and paper and a calendar is huge. What you did this day and how many trucks, and keeping load tickets, and just showing an employer that you're organized and that you could keep like the paperwork, the data on the business side is huge. So if you could present everything to me that happened that day and I don't have to show up to the job, and you drop it off at the desk every day, I mean, you're showing the initiative and not even asking. Like you're just doing it. You're going out the extra way. You're doing what a supervisor does without getting paid. You'll get noticed. I mean, go the extra mile and treat people with respect, from the customers to the clients. And sometimes, like how I got there is I would just handle the situation. Like the job was just going wrong. The chaos was all over the place. We would have like a big watering hole. I did a lot of deep excavation. And I mean, there's times like in the trench boxes, we got all these pumps and whatever, and I got to call the company to de-water and set the pumps even deeper. Abort from that conversation, and then realize, man, I got, let's say, $1,000 an hour sitting here for this crew. We got to keep making my boss money. I pull off of here and I'll run over to like another and start running like a bunch of sewer leads to the houses off the main line or something. Keeping the job going, thinking, always keeping things going while picking up the phone, calling the watering company, ordering some extra stone, and making sure that it was okay with the employer as you first start getting going, but start making the calls that are efficient, running the job. Because at the end of the day, the supervisor, you're his eyes and ears, and you're doing everything that guy needs to do, while he's doing the whole other side of the aspect of running the business. So if you're making him money and you're making the best judgment calls and you're keeping them up to date, and you're keeping the job advancing and moving, and handling the customers and the support and everything. I mean, that's how you get there. You don't just get there just being like, I want to be a supervisor and I want the pickup truck.
Right. So the only thing I'll really kind of tag on to the end of that is coming at it from a larger company perspective. So like a 300 plus company where you're kind of a number. One of the biggest ways you can stand out, and this is really any company, is being able to think of what is the next step, what is our end goal here, and how can we get there more efficiently, more quickly, and then on the fly, when things are starting to fall apart, instead of having to call your supervisor for everything, if you're able to adapt and overcome those circumstances and keep the job moving forward, the next time your foreman comes around in his pickup truck and he sees that, hey, you guys altered the plan, but you explain why and what happened and why you made that judgment call, obviously assuming you made the correct judgment call, that's going to go a long way, because now you are starting to take over some of the responsibilities that foreman would have to take over. That's what's going to get you noticed by upper management of, hey, this guy has some real potential to manage a job, as opposed, I've worked with tons of operators that have been in the industry for 30 years and they're still in the seat of an excavator. And they are some of the best excavator operators out there, and they know how to put pipe in the ground great. Would not want them anywhere close to running a job. They just don't know it. They don't understand it. They don't think that way. So you've got to be able to show management that you are capable of thinking in a way that is managing the job, managing material, thinking 5-6 steps ahead. That was one of the things when I was running loader that was so big, is I would call my foreman 3 days before we were going to run out of 21A for the job, because I knew we needed to get those trucks ordered. It wasn't always going to be in the next day. Sometimes it was 2 or 3 days before we could get those trucks in. Pipe trucks, you're talking a week or so before you get a pipe truck in, depending on where you're ordering from. Like, those are the sort of decisions you've got to be thinking about and you've got to be making in order to stand out as this guy's more than just an operator.
And that comes down to running a business. I mean, being a supervisor is similar to being a business owner. So, getting off topic, but
so Shand, great question. What are your thoughts staying union versus non-union? I'm going to offend some people here, and I'm sorry. So let me first cover my ass by saying that unions have been extremely instrumental in getting wages up and getting benefits better and helping the industry progress forward. I will tell you definitively, I worked in Texas. I started in this industry in Texas. I even talked to my old recruiter that was the first guy to ever hire me into this industry. I talked to him when I went to make the How to Build Your Resume video, and we reconfirmed that wages in Texas are crap compared to Michigan. That's 100% because of the union. Now, to flip gears. My big problem with the union is the fact that your retirement is 100% tied up and in their hands, and they can do whatever they want with it. Excuse me. Just because you have a pension does not mean you will receive that pension, especially when multiple times in the past we've had some union officials dip into the pension fund to go, buy something nice for themselves. So there is an aspect that I would say so many non-union companies are starting to get there with their wages and benefits packages that you don't necessarily have to stay union to get the benefits of the union. But now you have the ability to have your retirement in a 401k that you can control. It's in your hands. That's just something, me personally, my wife's family was UAW here with the automotive unions. And I watched multiple family members of hers get burned on their pensions because of all of the stuff that happened with GM, Ford, and Chrysler. And so that really kind of changed my entire perspective on how the pensions are handled, and that really made me nervous about having my retirement wrapped up in something that I could not and was not able to touch. So me personally, I lean a little more away from the union because of that. But by no means am I going to sit here and dog the union and say that's a bad choice. It's don't hear that at all.
Being an operator, getting into the union, they offer so much to you that a non-union company might offer to you. Depends where you're at, what location, what state. As far as seat time, though, non-union would be the way to go if you would really want to get some hours on different equipment, from the dozer, loader, excavator. When you get into the union, like Brian said, you're kind of a number, and you're going to be the number assigned to like a bulldozer or assigned to an excavator. You're going to travel around kind of where that goes, versus a non-union guy. There's no structure of, yeah, I know you were running that excavator today over there, but tomorrow you're going to start backfilling and finish grading. And you might be there for 8 hours that day and then jump back into like a loader, versus the union. They got the structure of, this is this guy's machine, this is this guy's job. That's the labor's job. So there's no right or wrong, especially right now with the lack of trades. Everybody's dying for help.
Yeah.
Everybody is paying really well. The wages are really starting to go up. So you're going to get noticed a lot in a non-union company a lot quicker. That being said, you could bounce over to a union company that has a lot more to offer, because you gotta take care of yourself too. Being an operator, your value, you're worth a lot of money making this $500,000 machine move around. I mean, you got to go get where you're going to get the most out of your hourly wage. So sometimes it's a union job, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's a non-union. So just look where you're at. Michigan union is really strong. Seattle's, I know a couple of non-union operators out there, and I think they're up to like $65 an hour. Like, they're killing it.
Yeah,
so,
that's awesome.
Just shop around. Really, just do your research. Look what you're getting into.
Ryan asks, what do y'all think about Bobcat skid steers and compact track loaders, whether it's the G, K, M, M2, or R series? First of all, Ryan, are you from Texas? Because that's one of the few times I've seen y'all spelled out in here. And, you're coming from my home state now. So
yeah, he's hit some roots there.
Yeah, so Bobcat skid steers, they make a good machine. My only beef with Bobcat is, yes, the computer chip. They are becoming the Apple of the construction industry. They have now chipped their attachments to where they will only work with Bobcat machines, and that pisses me right off. That makes me angry.
You're getting to a price point though with them. Like,
that's true.
They know you buy that skid steer, you're only glued to using their attachments.
Yep.
And they kind of like take out the realm of like, hey, I found a really good deal on that attachment over there. It doesn't jive with your computer system. So great machines, pretty good product. I'm not a huge fan of them myself. I've run them for a few hours. They're great machines. They're one of the notorious pound them till you park them. Like, they run forever.
Yep, they do.
Price point. I mean, they sell it actually pretty good price point on those too, though. Yeah.
Real quick, Finkel, thanks for hanging out. Ryan, I'm a Dripping Springs boy right here. We're at in Austin. This is making me a little nostalgic now.
We're here to talk about heavy equipment, guys.
I know. We're going to talk about Texas. Yeah.
We're up here in Michigan.
The drip. Let's see here. Choo. Oh, yeah. So to finish out your question, Ryan, as far as the series, I'm not personally familiar enough with them to steer you to series. I don't have enough seat time in them, in all honesty.
Dealer support.
Yep. Dealer support. Yep.
Huge.
Oh, let's see here. What else do we have? Cox 54 still hitting the hand shovel. That's the thing is, when I were on that, now this is kind of playing into that union thing too. One of the things that drove me nuts on jobs was seeing guys that refused to get out of the seat and help the laborer.
Yeah.
Because I'm a union operator. I don't do that. And likewise,
it's not my job.
It's not my job. And likewise, when there was a real situation where you didn't have an operator to operate that piece of equipment and you needed someone to move it, let the frickin' laborer get in the piece of equipment and move it. It's such a ridiculous, asinine thing to get bent out of shape. I'm not saying go let him run it for a week because you don't want to pay a union operator to be out there. But within reason, freaking do each other's jobs and help each other out. That's Like, we call this a brotherhood until it's not convenient, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, nope. So that drives me nuts. But just to reiterate, yeah, even at 54, you are not over the shovel, and it drives me nuts when people think that they are. So, oh, and I just saw Phil is in here. Phil, how you been, man? So Phil is from Australia, and he is also regularly in these, which there is, man, who is the other guy? I can't remember that we're missing.
I've been to Australia.
Have you really?
Yeah.
Did you really?
Held a koala bear and everything.
Did you really?
Yeah. You know they got those bouncing kangaroos that jump up on their tail?
Yes.
I watched the dude that I was with get the snot beat out of him.
That's awesome. When did you do that?
Oh, I was like 18 years old.
Gotcha. I've
Remember
never been over there.
the crocodile guy, Steve Irwin?
Yeah, Steve Irwin.
He had a bunch of crazy alligators chained to the trees. We went to his little
no joke
safari. Yeah, it was wild.
Another question. Starting school for heavy equipment operator in December because I was able to do the fast track.
Congratulations.
Year, go straight into the industry. What's the best move after school, and what are some good options for jobs?
Build your resume. Get out and apply. You're going to be out with like hardly any experience or knowledge, so highlight your training. Get out
your work
there.
ethic.
Yeah, get out there. You want to show them that you're dedicated and that you could hold a job, but get out there. Let them know. Drop off your resume. I mean, when I first started, I looked up all the excavating companies within like 20-mile radius and just started emailing my resume, highlighting what you got, the experience that you just handled, the school, the training. There's nothing better than a guy that just got a little bit of training, a little bit of knowledge, being familiar with the equipment. Highlight it. Let them know.
Yep.
I want to get in there. I'm willing to start out as a laborer. I've had some seat time running this equipment, and let them know, like we said before, get out there and say, hey, man, I would really like to help you out. Can I do this after work without being paid? Let me get a little more seat time to the point where you can get paid, and just put yourself out there. Beat on some doors. Let them know you're ready to get out in the field.
Yep, absolutely. I don't really have a whole lot to add to that. I would say the biggest piece of advice I'll tell you is, obviously, like we've been saying through all of these, and I've said in the past, you are going to come out of it with some industry knowledge because of the schooling you've gone to and everything. Don't go out there and run your mouth. Don't think that you know it all. You are still very, very, very inexperienced coming out of those tech schools or those trade schools. Go out there expecting to be on the shovel, and it may be a year of you being on the shovel, and you need to be okay with that, even though you went to a trade school.
Swallow your pride.
Swallow your pride and learn the craft, because it is a craft. There's a reason they call this the skilled trades. It is not something that anyone can go out there and spend a day in a machine and pick it up. This is a honed craft that you have to learn over time. So, and that's honestly, that piece of advice right there is probably going to carry your career further than anything else I could tell you, is swallow your pride and put in your time. So, but that being said, have fun, man. This is a great industry. So let's wrap this up in 10 minutes because Rick does have to work tomorrow. And I'm going to be out there a little later in the day. I'm not going to get up as early as he is, but still, let's wrap this up at 10 o'clock. So we're going to try to hit the last couple here. Which, by the way, Ryan, Lago Vista. So you're out there with the old folks who are feeding deer. That's where you're at. Lago Vista, man. It's all the old retirees, and they have a bunch of deer.
Heaven's waiting room,
dude. It's ridiculous. They have a bunch of deer that they have all trained to feed out of the palm of your hand. So they're literally, and they won't let you hunt. So there's just deer everywhere.
Perfect.
So. Greg, thanks for the compliment. I appreciate that. The teaching series videos, my down and dirties, that's why I put them out there. I hope you guys can apply the tricks. I am going to, here in the next couple of weeks, do one on websites and their importance on existing businesses and new businesses. So keep posted on that. And also let me know if you have a topic you want covered. I've already done like 5 or 6 videos that were specifically, in fact, tomorrow's video is specifically geared towards a request about aggregates. So it's not going to be the most fascinating video, but I respond to requests. So if you buy a used cat and it breaks, Cat will come out and fix it. Oh, so if you buy a used cat and it breaks, will Cat come and fix it, or is it only when it's... No, so Skechers, the way that works is you can call the dealership on any piece of equipment. We would go out as our case dealership, and we had some 1845Cs that we were servicing that were 20, 30 years old. And those are old machines. We go out and work on old dozers that were 30 or 40 years old. So it's not that service ends at any point in time. Really what it boils down to is you're no longer under warranty on those machines. Do you want to pay the premium to have the dealership work on it, or do you want to hire some mechanic that is a heavy equipment mechanic? And I'm not dogging those guys. Please hear me out here. Make sure you have a solid one, because you can absolutely make it cost you more money. But at the same time, there are some solid techs out there that can do 90% of the stuff that's required to your machine.
Yep.
The only thing that they're going to be lacking that is getting worse nowadays with the equipment is the ability to tap into the computer. And on so many new machines, it's essential to tap into the computer. So that's where they're going to be limited. What compact wheel loaders would you guys recommend? Taking the dealership out of the equation. So the first thing I would say is, if you're planning on doing any sort of snow pushing, this is where Nick's going to give me some more crap. The Case 321. And I am not saying that lightly. We have put that Case 321 up against loaders that are 2 or 3 sizes bigger than it, doing snow pushing. Now the key is you have to get the limited slip differentials in it. That sucker will outpush like a I don't even remember what the 521 equivalent cat is. It will outpush loaders that are like 2 sizes bigger. It is a snow pushing machine. It's a really well balanced machine. It's a fantastic compact loader. I haven't, fair warning, full disclosure, I haven't spent a lot of seat time in the cat compact loaders. I'm trying to think. I think I was in one on a Dan's job, and it was super jerky. I was not a big fan of it, but that could have just been I was not used to running a compact wheel loader at that point in time. But you got any thoughts on that one?
No, I haven't really run a whole lot of compact.
Okay. Cat 950G. Yes, I have run a Cat 950G. I have run the twin stick version, and I hated it. I hate twin stick. It had nothing to do with the 950G. I just hate twin stick and loaders. But no, those are solid loaders. They got a lot of power. They're kind of the old dogs in the industry. There's a lot of them out there. The newer loaders tend to have a little more balls to them. Just because they've upped the horsepower, I think. But no, those are solid machines.
We carried a D6 around with 2 950s.
Oh yeah, you told me about that. Forking on each
Colorado,
side. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, they're beasts.
Those are some beasts.
They are. There's some beasts.
Lift and power, just phenomenal.
I just freaking hate the twin stick aspect. And most of those larger loaders, for whatever reason, always come in twin stick. Should I get my Class A? When should I get it? Within the first... So, Garrett, I would say yes. If you're going to get a CDL, don't fool around with any of the other ones. Get a Class A, because that's going to allow you to pull either a tag trailer or use a semi with a lowboy. And that's all you're going to need in this industry. You don't ever just drive a dump truck. It's always you're pulling a piece of equipment behind it. So definitely get your Class A. I would say don't necessarily get it right away on your dime, because a lot of times if you express an interest in it, your employer will actually pay for you to get that. And my motto, same with tech schools, same with anything, why pay for it when you can have someone pay you to do it? So see if you can get your employer to pay for you to get your CDL.
Absolutely.
How do you pick a name for your company? It's whatever you want it to be. It could be Little Skechers Excavating, and you don't have to explain that to anyone how you arrived at the title or the name Little
Social
Skechers.
Social media now, I mean, your name, it's got to kind of reference what you're doing, right? You don't want to pick like Pink Lemonade and you're moving dirt.
True.
Right? You earth pushing something. You want to get something that's out there that catches their eye, But there's so many ways. A lot of people like their last names. A lot of people their history. But it used to be like everybody wanted the company to start with the A because it was the first thing in the phone book. So now these days, just make it catchy.
Yeah, make it catchy, and it doesn't. I will say this definitively. When it comes to your logo and your name, do not spend a ton of time on it because no one really cares. You're the only one that cares about the name. As long as it's, I will say this, don't make it overly complicated because you want them to be able to remember it. So if it is Little Sketchers Excavating, like that's a quick, catchy, boom, you've got it. That's catchy.
I like that.
But if you have Little Sketchers, super awesome, extremely great excavating company, like no one in their right mind is going to remember that name. Even though it might be really important to you that you portray that you're this really super awesome excavating company in your title, no one's going to care and no one's going to remember it. So
they're going to look at your work.
Yep. Your work speaks. Okay, we got to go lightning fast because we are pretty much at 10 o'clock. Opinion on Doosan excavators?
Nah, I don't know nothing about them.
My opinion is
Doosan.
that Doosans, they're not terrible. They're not one of the more known brands over here. So as long as you've got dealer support for them, they're not terrible machines. You're not gonna buy a dog. I'll tell you that. Do you have any tricks on estimating how much fill dirt you need on a job? I know how we do it. Just thought I'd ask if there's a new way. Honestly,
site takeoff, man.
So you can do a site takeoff, or I tell you, it's getting to the point where drone technology is so cheap now, you could almost, as a small business owner, justify. I have a Phantom 4 drone that you can go pick up, probably used online for around $700, and then the software to actually be able to do real flyovers, take the photography and estimate that stuff. You're talking probably $1,000 a year for a subscription to it. It does not take that. It's not a huge upfront cost like it used to be able to do. Sorry, I got distracted by Taylor here. That's the Taylor that I'm going to go work with. That's why I'm distracted. Cool. Sorry, I'm going to get to you, Taylor. Anyway, there's not this huge upfront cost like there used to be in the industry to get into where you can do pretty accurate cut and fill diagrams. So that is kind of the next step. But if you're keeping it stupid simple, I mean, how do you go out and figure it?
Just a laser, tape measure, experience.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times I could estimate piles, estimate how much the land is. I mean, just the seat time experience helps, digging with the shovel, see how much organic maybe you got. Take a couple shots with the laser without going all the crazy GPS stuff. Get a roundabout estimate and basically take a square and break it down, or a rectangle, break it down to what you got, and it'll get you close. And then the other thing is you got 25% fluff.
Yeah.
When you get this out of the hole, like it won't go back in the hole. Air gets in there. I don't care what hole you dig, you cannot put all the hole back in the ground. There's a pile that will sit there because it's called fluff. There's 25% air that gets involved, and it fluffs up the topsoil, fluffs up the clay. Sand, not so much, but you got to look at what you're working with.
Let's see here. Compact track loader. So Ryan, to your question about the compact track loaders not having enough ass. No, that is not the case with the 321. Once you step down into the compact track loaders, because you kind of switch frames and everything, they can't move the engine around like they could on the bigger models. And so, no, they do have enough ass that they can lift some material. So that is not a problem like it is in the bigger ones. Little Sketchers, installing a fuel transfer tank into a bed of a pickup. Could I do a video on that? Do you need to install a fuel transfer tank on your truck?
You can if you want to get diesel fuel to the job.
But do you need one? Because that's the only way I'm going to make a video is if you're installing one and I come over.
I got one laying out back.
Do you need it in a truck?
We could practice.
I don't know.
We'll get you a video. I got.
Stay posted, Little Sketchers. We'll see.
We're rebuilding a dump truck right now.
Yeah, so he's in the process of another project. So, MM Films, thanks for swinging in. We'll see you next week. And Taylor, coming back to you. Yes, there is a good chance I will be getting some seat time in your brand new, almost brand new. He's buying a Doosan with only 500 hours on it.
Really?
Yeah, so that's what I'm going to go run and clean. Apparently, he's got a mile worth of ditches that need cleaning.
I heard those are pretty nice machines. I never.
They are nice machines on the inside.
Like I heard to operate and everything's pretty.
Yep, they're nice.
Pretty nice.
So we're doing a crap load of drain tile. We're cleaning some ditches, and I don't even remember what else. So Taylor, stay in touch when you get some dates on that project so I can start planning for it. But that being said, I gotta cut us off, everybody. We're at a good stopping point. We're at 10:03. We didn't go that far over, so I'm going to finish this out by saying, Rick, thanks for being on. Appreciate it. Everyone seems to love having you on, and everybody, thanks for showing up. As always, you guys make these things possible, and so we will do it again next Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope to see you there. Thanks for hanging out, guys.